Hello, hello, hello! Welcome everybody to a very exciting developer stream and Q&A for Foundry Virtual Tabletop. I hope you are all doing exceptionally well. Thank you so much for joining us here in Twitchland. I'm Andrew, also known as Atropos, and I'm joined by the intrepid Kim.
Hi everyone.
Come on, you can muster a little bit more intrepid bravado than that.
I actually have to refresh my memory on what intrepid really means.
Well, venturing bravely forth into the unknown perils of V9P2 release notes. I hope everyone is doing very well. Thank you all for joining us. How's our volume level coming through to you all out there in Twitchland? We'll get a little bit of background music going here. Hopefully the level is good, but I can maybe lower it a little bit if it's too much. I am much louder than Kim. Well, I thought I fixed that pre-stream, but let me see what I can do here. So if I turn this down in Foundry, it's a little bit of an audio balancing act, but
in general, I just speak a bit more softly, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I'll hopefully our levels aren't too disparate. I'm looking at the levels on OBS right now, and it seems to suggest that we're comparable, but hopefully we're good enough for for today. Welcome everyone. I'm really glad that you all joined us. We have an exciting stream today. It's been about a month, I guess, since our last one, so we have lots of stuff to talk about because we've been busy bees in the meantime. So I want to jump in, I guess, first off with a couple of little announcements for you all. Just to let you know about some stuff that's happening. So firstly, V9 prototype release number 2 is going to be releasing today. It's very exciting, although I should caution everyone, this is going to be a sort of unstable prototype release very early in our overall release cycle for version 9. So it isn't safe for people to use for, full games. But it is definitely available for folks to test out, especially those of you in the development community who want to get your hands dirty with the new APIs around card support, around scrolling text, around what have you, all the stuff we're going to show today in the stream. If you want to get your hands dirty with figuring out how it can integrate into your modules or systems, this is a really ideal time for you to test those prototypes, the APIs, and to give us feedback on the design of the API, as well as how it's working for you in your use case. So if that applies to you, definitely will encourage you to consider giving it some tests. But for the rest of you, all of these changes will be coming to stable release eventually, now that we've finished the prototype phase. And I should clarify, this is the final release in the prototype phase. So we're done prototyping at this point. So from here, we're going to be moving on to API testing and user testing, feature testing. And once we do a lot of testing for all of this stuff and we iron out some of the kinks, it will be released as a stable release for everybody. So there probably will be kinks today because we haven't ironed them all out yet. This is a prototype, so you're probably going to see a couple bugs during the stream, but that's okay. We are most definitely not done with all of this yet, but it is coming well along, and so we're excited to show it to all of you. Let's see, what else do I have? Other announcements. So for those of you who are wanting to play on a stable release, I should mention that we, and I can go to the Foundry website, that's way too zoomed in. We released 0.8.9 about a month ago now, and it's been out and it's been very stable. And so for those of you who are interested in, using the latest, greatest stable version, 0.8.9 is the one for you. So if you're on the 0.8 series and you haven't updated to 0.89 yet, I definitely encourage you to do that, as it fixes a bunch of bugs and generally is just more stable and more secure. So that's just a quick reminder for those of you who are wanting to be in the most stable place. We saw some questions in Discord about like which release right now, which version right now is the right one for, for the typical user. Well, that one is 0.8.9. That's our latest, greatest stable release. Next up, I wanted to mention that there will be a very special episode of Hammering It Out, our periodic classy Foundry VTT related talk show, interview, sort of fireside chat style broadcast. And that episode of Hammering It Out will be happening tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time with our own Cody and Shane, Anathema, who will be taking your questions in an AMA format in chat tomorrow on Twitch, on this channel. And those questions, you'll be able to ask them live in Twitch chat. You'll also be able to pre-seed some questions using a Reddit thread, which will be going up momentarily. And if you pop over to the community subreddit, you'll be able to post questions there that Shane and Cody will cover during the Hammering It Out episode tomorrow. Speaking of the community subreddit, I wanted to give a huge congratulations to the community over there in Reddit land, as our community subreddit celebrated a really cool milestone just last week of 25,000 members, which is really amazing and very humbling. And it's just been exceptional to see the growth on Reddit, and it's such a useful forum and an avenue for people to share their experiences with Foundry, their questions, their tips, their guides. There's just so much great content on the community Reddit. So if you're into that, I would encourage you all to check it out. It's Reddit /r/FoundryVTT. Someone can maybe put a link in chat for anyone who doesn't have that handy. It's a great community, well worth checking out. And yeah, so congratulations to them on their super amazing milestone. Really, really very cool stuff. All right. Next up, I have a couple of little advertisements of some cool content I wanted to make sure you're all aware of, because we had some really exciting content launches in the past week or so. So let me just show a couple of those real quick, just to let you all know what some of the coolest, latest, greatest stuff that we've had drop recently. So we've got official content from Free League for Vaesen, which is a very neat and atmospheric game system of Nordic mythology and horror. They have an official system implementation now from Free League that you can buy for Foundry. Also from Free League, we have new content for Symbaroum. The starter set and the core rulebook are now available. I know a lot of you are really excited for the sort of rebooted Symbaroum stuff. Me too, I'm a backer on Kickstarter. Been really enjoying seeing that progress, and that is all available on Foundry right now, all from our great partners and friends at Free League. Really worth checking out if you're interested in those game systems. It's really very cool stuff. We also had an awesome release from our friends at Pinnacle in partnership with Paizo on the kind of collaboration project of Savage Pathfinder, which, if you're not aware of it, it's a really cool sort of mashup of the lore and iconic, monsters and classes and experience of playing Pathfinder, but implemented into the Savage Worlds game system and rule set. And it turns into what is a really unique and very clever kind of mix of deep and rich lore with really crunchy and interesting game mechanics that Savage Worlds brings to the table. So I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I've read through it a little bit, but I'm myself looking for an opportunity to give Savage Pathfinder a try. So that launched this week. We also had just yesterday, or maybe the day before, a release from AAW Games on Applied and Aggregate Spelunking. A very cool little adventure in the sort of an underground settlement that's its own little adventure path, and it's designed specifically to introduce the players to a narrative arc and a set of adventures that really flexes all of the rules that are in their survivalist guide to spelunking. This is content for the 5e system, and so if you're 5e players and you're really interested in like underground exploration, Underdark, sort of campaign, maybe like Rise of the Drow, also an AAW campaign, or Out of the Abyss, an official WotC campaign. If you're interested in that type of content, the spelunking content from AAW is very cool. Very cool rules, things that you can mix into your existing campaign. And then lastly, but most certainly not least, because it's absolutely an enormous launch, we had two releases that I'm super excited about personally from Kobold Press. So Kobold Press is one of the best, in my opinion, third-party publishers of 5e content out there. They've been doing this forever, and they have this amazing collection of monsters that they put together in Tome of Beasts. And more recently, they've actually released Tome of Beasts 2 as well as Creature Codex. But Tome of Beasts is like an absolutely incredible collection of over 400 creatures for D&D that you can import directly into your Foundry game. It's all ready to go. They're super amazing. I'll showcase a couple of them in a little bit. We also have the corresponding Book of Lairs, which is a collection of 20 sort of self-contained small adventures. Like each adventure probably takes about 1, maybe 2 game sessions to experience, and there's 20 of them in this book. You can import these lairs one at a time, or you can import all of them. They span all of the level range from 1 all the way to 20, and so you can sort of mix them into your existing campaign. Like if you need a interesting like point of interest or dungeon or some little plot line to carry your players over from like level 6 to level 7, there's something amazing in Book of Lairs for you that you can. Oh, Matt's corrected me that there's 24 actually. Yeah, so my mistake. There's even more content than I first said in Book of Lairs. It's really amazing stuff, and Book of Lairs includes a number of the creatures from Tome of Beasts in it. So you get some of that as well. And this is all 5e. This is all 5e content. So maybe at some point in the episode today, I might enable these modules and show you all a little bit of like firsthand look at, maybe after the break. I think that would be a good time. After the break, I can show a little bit of the Kobold Press stuff. All right. Well, that's some of my little announcements. Oh, one more. So we have our own little adventure that's coming soon. Some of you have seen it or know about it. It's called The Demon Queen Awakens, and it is it's an adventure. It's sort of a dungeon boss gauntlet against some very deadly adversaries, designed for level 9 player characters. And this adventure is I think it's pretty cool. It's very tactically challenging on sort of boss design, boss mechanics. It's got this big sprawling dungeon for your players to explore. There's some mysteries for you to unravel. But I think it's a really cool couple session adventure in Foundry that is really gonna impress, I think, a lot of you on just how good it looks and how well it uses some of the some of the game system. Oh my gosh, look at this gift from an anonymous gifter who just gave a truckload of tier 1 subs. Wow, thank you so much. It's probably, it may be for the best that you stayed anonymous with that. Otherwise, you'd have people thanking you for the entirety of this stream. That's really amazing generosity from whoever that was. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Really, really generous support. But anyways, yeah, Demon Queen Awakens. It will be coming soon, and it's from us, our team. It's sort of an official Foundry adventure. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how people like it. I'm really hoping that people will respond to it well and really enjoy it. It will be available later this month, and it will be available for Patreon supporters on patreon.com/, Foundry VTT. So more details on that coming, and lots of like previews of that, but it's got music, it's got tokens, it's got beautiful maps, it's got cover artwork, it's got puzzles and macros and journal entries and overhead tiles and lighting tricks and puzzles and sound puzzles, and it uses kind of like all of the tools that Foundry can use to tell a story and tell an adventure. It's got some of everything. So and very scary enemies. Yeah, thank you, Matt. But yeah, so I hope you all look forward to that, and we'll be sharing more about Demon Queen Awakens in the near future. All right, well, I think that does it for my lead-in. Lots of amazing stuff there. Honestly, it's really incredible. Okay, I think we should go ahead and jump into the dev stream. Kim, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Kim, tell everyone about what we're doing with V9P2. Give a little overview of it while I pull up the notes and before we get into the blow-by-blow.
All right, well, for starters, there's been a ton of fixes from V9P1, as well as scooped up a lot of 089 fixes. But I think the main focus is the cards API. So in there, we have now the actual API, we've got sheets, probably subject to change, but we've got the prototype sheets in there, and you can actually start getting to use cards and playing around with them, and really hopefully giving us feedback on the API and how you want to be using these cards as well.
Yeah, we wanted to handle the lighting improvements in V9P1 first, because since that's an existing system, doing it first kind of allowed us to get some of the braking changes and stuff out of the way related to existing lighting, and then the new stuff that we're doing, cards, is an entirely new system that many of you have been waiting for a really long time, and yeah, I'm excited to show what we've got. Lord Z, good question from Lord Zeal about, are the release notes live on the site for those who want to read along? It's not published yet, but I think it would be fine for Nath or one of our moderators to share the link to this. We are still doing a little bit of proofreading, so some of the exact wording of the issues may change. But for any of you who want to read along during the stream, someone can share the link to this I can share it in chat. Nath beat me to it. Perfect. So feel free to read along and take a look at the notes as we go. We're still touching them up, but yeah. All right, so thanks for the overview, Kim. Let's go ahead and jump into exact changes that we've made. So the first one is the card support system. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start there, and I'm going to showcase what we've done with cards. And probably later, when we start going bullet point by bullet point through the notes, I'll skip over the ones that are card related that we've already talked about. Here I am in Foundry VTT, and from a visual perspective, cards have been added to the ecosystem. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the document model that we have in Foundry, cards are a new type of document that has been added to the ecosystem. And you can find on our alpha API docs, you can find, now I haven't added it to the table of contents here in the index yet, that's still a to-do, but you can find many of the new cards classes documented in our alpha API docs. So cards is the new top-level document, which represents a collection of cards. It could be a deck, it could be a hand, it could be a stack of cards, like a pile, like a discard pile. But any way you want to think about that, the collection of cards, that is the top-level document. Now, within each of those top-level cards documents, there are individual card embedded documents. So just like an actor might have many items or many active effects, just like a scene has tokens or map notes, a collection of cards has individual card documents as embedded within it. I can show you an example of what some of this starts to look like in the software. Now, a disclaimer first, which is the V9P2 work that we've been doing really focuses on establishing what's the data model, what is the underlying document structure, what are the underlying APIs for creating, updating, deleting documents, for moving them around, for organizing them. And it focuses on APIs for performing common operations that you would do to a collection of cards or an individual card, like shuffle a deck, draw from a pile, pass some cards to another player. It adds API support for all of those. It also adds some initial interface because we needed some basic UI in order to help ourselves and help those of you in the testing community to play around with cards and to test the system. But we haven't made a huge effort in V9P2 to make the aesthetic of cards beautiful. I think there's lots of opportunity from here to start making it more pretty in terms of like the visual experience of say drawing a card or looking at your hand or something. So a lot of these interfaces are a little bit basic, I suppose, functional, but not necessarily beautiful. We're going to try and make them a bit more beautiful, but we definitely know that many of you in the modding community are going to do some absolutely mind-blowing things aesthetically with cards. What we wanted to focus on is giving you the underlying horsepower to do that with powerful APIs and good data structures. Okay, so for example, we have a deck, which is when you create a new stack of cards, as with, say, actors or items, you might have multiple different types you can choose from. There are 3 types of cards documents that you can choose from. There's a deck, a hand, and a pile. And those 3 types of card documents are default to all systems in Foundry VTT. Now, in a game system that uses cards, you actually also have the ability to define custom types. Like you can define custom types of actors or custom types of items. So if you were making like a, sort of a CCG type game where there's specific decks of cards or specific piles of cards that have mechanical meaning to your system, you can register custom types for those collections of cards and give them custom data models associated as well. But this is an example of the default deck, and there's 2 tabs here on our sheet for the default deck. There's a configuration tab where you can customize some attributes of the deck, and this is a sort of standard 52 card poker deck of playing cards. And then there's a cards tab where you can create, update, delete. You can configure all of the cards that belong to the deck. So this is where you would go if you're creating a brand new deck, and I can show what that would look like. So for example, new deck. I can create a new deck, I can give it a image, and one thing you'll note that is pretty cool is that we have included some built-in card images. I'll show you some of those in a bit. You can give your deck a description, you can configure some attributes of it. On the cards tab, you can start adding cards. So, you could have a card called 1, might have another card called 2. And for each of these cards, there's a sheet where you can configure the details of that card within your deck. You can define a suit, which is sort of like a family or collection of cards. It's optional. Some card games have concepts of suits, some don't. You can define a value if it's useful for your cards to have a numerical value, like 2 might have a value of 2, 1 might have a value of 1. You can define the faces that your card has. So now this was something where we worked closely with the League of Extraordinary VTT developers, where in a physical card system, the card is sort of a 2-dimensional piece of paper, cardboard, plastic. But in a VTT world, we wanted to give developers the opportunity to use cards to represent more mechanically sophisticated concepts. There's some games, for example, where a card serves like dual purposes, where depending on how you maybe rotate it, or you declare up front whether you're using like version A or version B. So we've actually made it to where the faces of the card can be, you can have more than one face, more than two faces even. You can have an arbitrary number of faces associated with your card, and each face can have its own, data, an image, artwork representation, text, things like that. So, this is something that if you're wanting to build a really high-powered card system, you get additional dimensions with multiple faces of your cards, which can be used to support different modes of playing a card on the tabletop. So you can add all these faces, you can give each face a name, an image, text. I'll just add one face for this example card, and suppose for my image, I'll show you these card images in a little bit, but we'll say, I'll just use the Queen of Clubs image for this card. And you can control like which face is shown by default on the deck view. And so you go on, so forth, add cards, remove cards, manage it. These UIs for cards are really designed to help people test the system, like I said, and to manage the creation of new decks. So you want to try it out by making a deck for yourself, and then you want to try and play a game with it. These interfaces are, in theory, all you should need in order to really test the system end to end. Although, as I'm sure you're all looking forward to, module developers are going to do some amazing and wild stuff with this down the road from here. So going back to my poker deck, we've got all the cards in this deck, and we've got some sort of cool artwork. I can maybe show. Let me see about. Let's see here. So I don't have an in UI option for displaying like full-size card artwork, but I can use the API to do that. So I'll just pull, these dev streams sometimes get a little bit nerdy with getting into some aspects of the code. So let me just pull the console over here, and I will pull a card programmatically from this deck. So the API for these cards, it's the same as all of the other documents that you may have gotten used to. So for example, I can get the deck of cards from the game.cards collection. That deck is a document. It has contained cards, which you can individually manipulate. You can create embedded documents, update, delete them. All of the APIs that you've come to expect in Foundry for working with documents and data structures, those all show up here for cards as well. So for example, suppose I get a card from the deck cards, get name, I'll grab the King of Clubs. I can say, for example, show the, I can use the image pop-out app to show this card. So here's an example of the very cool sort of card artwork that we created as a built-in for our system. This is sort of new card faces that you can use. This is like a dark sort of gold foil type card. I can also show the deck, the sort of deck itself. So there's, for example, a card back that has the Foundry logo on it, built in, that you can use. It's just so that there's some built-in, images for cards that you can use in the system. So we've got the card deck with the Foundry logo. We've got the dark sort of foil cards. It's pretty nice. Anathema did a cool job making all of these. They came out really well. Yeah. But anyway, so we've got all of the cards in the deck. Let me show you a couple of the other document types that are included in the card support system. So when you create a card stack, you could also create a hand or a pile. We'll talk about a hand for a moment. So here, I'll just open the very basic sheet. Here's one for Andrew's hand, Kim's hand. This allows you, hands are obviously the type of document that you would use to represent a collection of cards that is sort of actively in play. It doesn't necessarily have to belong to a user, although you can assign a hand to a user. You don't have to. Hands can belong to the table, they can belong to the game master, they can belong to a non-player character. So you can use hands kind of however you want. But some of the things that you can do with the cards support system, and all of these are powered by underlying API methods. So the sheets here, the buttons on the sheet, all they're doing is just using the underlying APIs that the card support system adds. We can say, for example, shuffle the deck. And there's a very convenient sort of deck.shuffle API that you can use for this. And each time I shuffle the deck, it will randomly reorder the contents of the deck. I can toggle very easily between viewing the deck in shuffled order versus viewing it in natural order. Viewing it in natural order just makes it easier to maybe find a card that you're looking for. It doesn't actually change the shuffled order, so when it's viewed in sort of the normal sort order, it's more alphabetical by suit, by value. It's easy to find, if I'm looking for the Two of Hearts, to change some data about it. It doesn't change the actual underlying shuffled order of the deck. But I can reshuffle the deck however many times I need to. I can deal cards out from the deck, and so when we use deal, there's obviously, as I said, with all of these operations, there's an underlying API like deck.deal, provide the hands that you're dealing to. So the API is very sort of intuitive and semantic to use, but there's a little front end that I can use as well. So when I click deal, it's a little pop-up about who you want to deal the cards to. So maybe I'll deal, say, 5 cards to both Andrew's hand and Kim's hand. You can customize how those cards are drawn from the deck. So there's this concept of the draw mode, which you can choose between top, bottom, and random. So top would be the sort of conventional method of drawing cards off of the top of the deck. Bottom would be drawing cards off of the bottom of the deck. Random would be withdrawing cards from the deck at random. And obviously that's what's implemented by default, but maybe other game systems have other custom methods for how cards come out of the deck. You can control all that using the API. But by default, you can draw from the top, from the bottom, or at random. So suppose we draw 5 cards off of the top of the deck. And we can choose whether those cards are dealt face down or not. So suppose I deal 5 cards off the top of the deck to each of these hands face down. If I click deal, you'll notice that the drawn checkbox of the deck shows that these cards taken off of the top, so the first 10 in order, were drawn into these respective hands. Now, I chose face down, so in each of these hands, the cards came in sort of unknown, where you don't yet know, which card you have. All of this is backed by the standard document permission structure that Foundry uses for controlling visibility and permission. So just like you would configure, for an actor, who owns the actor, who has observer permission to the actor, who can edit it, etc. You can do the same thing with decks and hands. So when I configure permission on the hand, it might be that I say, player 1 is the owner of this hand, while player 2 is the owner of this other hand. And it would rely on you configuring those permission controls to make sure that the right people have access to, see the deck, to see the hand, etc. Yes, so I'll get to some questions about card APIs in a moment, but those of you in chat asking questions, if I can get you to maybe hold those for just a little bit, I might cover some of them normally, and anything I didn't cover, I'll be happy to answer some questions on in just a bit. Okay, so we dealt out 5 cards to both players, and if I turn face up the top 2 cards in each player's hand, you'll notice that the order in which they were dealt follows the sort of logical, intuitive order that cards would be dealt at a physical table. So the 3 of diamonds, which is the first card, went to Andrew's hand. The second card, Jack of Hearts, became the first card in Kim's hand. So it kind of alternated back and forth. If you had multiple players that have cards being dealt to them, it would go around in a cycle from player to player, dealing cards until the appropriate number have been dealt to everyone. So you can see how the order that the cards wound up in your hand was dependent on the shuffled order of the deck. So that's the deal operation, and you can deal more cards at any time. So if I want to give one more card off of the bottom of the deck to both hands, I can do that. And each hand just got another card, and those two cards were taken off of the bottom of the deck. So that's the basic deal operation. There's a lot of power in the API underlying this interface that you can use as a module developer. The next deck level operation is a reset. So suppose you're done playing for now, and you want to reset the deck back to its original state. There's a reset button that allows you to pull all of the cards out of respective piles, respective hands, and return them to the original deck that they belong to. So if I click reset, you'll notice that all of the cards disappear from both Andrew's hand and Kim's hand, and the deck is returned to its natural order. None of the cards are drawn anymore. So this sort of pulled all of the cards back into the deck when I reset it. So those are deck level commands. One thing I can do at the hand level is, you can imagine if you're a player, you don't get to see the deck. Only maybe the game master gets to see the deck, for example. The players wouldn't have visibility into seeing like exactly what's in the deck and in what order. You wouldn't be able to see any of that. So from a player's perspective, the player who owns their own hand has the ability to draw cards from the deck without seeing, what's in the deck. So it's a similar interface, but except this time from the hand level, I'm using the draw method. And if you're drawing cards into a hand instead of dealing cards out, you get to choose where are you drawing those cards from. So which deck are you pulling cards from, how many, top, bottom, or at random, face up, face down. So again, I could draw 5 cards from the deck. I could draw them face down into my hand. This just drew 5 cards into my hand. It didn't draw any cards into Kim's hand. And so it's a different API. It serves a slightly different use case. And this would allow you to draw, cards into your hand off of the deck. The next thing that I can do is at the hand level is I can pass cards. So there's a pass operation where this enables for cards to be moved from one hand to another hand, or from a hand to a pile. So for example, I've got a discard pile. I haven't talked about piles much yet, but I could say I needed to discard 2 cards. I can pass 2 cards to the discard pile at random, maybe. And that randomly took 2 of my cards and discarded them. I can also pass cards to Kim. Say, suppose I tried to pass, 4 cards to Kim. It would give me a warning that, I don't have enough, an error rather. It'll give me an error that I don't have enough cards to do that. But, if I want to pass all 3 of my cards to Kim's hand, I can do that. I can send them, face down. And then all of my cards are gone from Andrew's hand, and they are now in Kim's hand, face down. Passing specific cards would be done at the cards level, at the individual card level. One of the things that we absolutely will be implementing, but did not do in V9P2, is like drag and drop reordering of cards. So we will have drag and drop for cards where you can use that to reorder the cards in your hand. You'll also be able to use card level operations within your hand to pass a specific card to another player or to another pile. That's a piece that is not done just yet, but that is a piece of the overall API. Like the API supports doing it, but the interface, the user interface, does not yet support doing it. So we need to still build a couple more interfaces to make it easy to do like single card operations. And that's what we're going to continue working on in the remainder of V9. So I'll reset my deck back here, and that will pull the cards back from the, from the pile. One other thing about piles is you'll notice that if I put some like 10 cards in the discard pile, for example, piles, unlike hands and decks, can be ordered. Or rather not can be ordered, but the order of cards within the pile really matters. So like if you're discarding cards, which card is on the top of the discard pile, and the order of those cards within the discard pile is mechanically relevant, whereas the ordering of cards within your hand may or may not be mechanically relevant. So discard pile has like some more mechanical strictness around the ordering of cards that's in the pile. But you can shuffle individual piles, because often you might be playing a game where the rules say like, reshuffle the discard pile and, do something with it. So you can shuffle, at will, you can sort of change up the order of what's in the pile, but it isn't as freeform as, say, like changing the order of cards within your hand. And certainly like within the pile, you can if you control the pile, you can change cards in that pile to be face up, face down, and this could eventually be much prettier. But I think it's a functional interface that allows you to start testing out the system. So I think that's like a kind of high-level overview of cards and the key touchstones of the system. Now, I want to just comment briefly on the API before I take questions from chat on this, but the client-side API for cards is, as I mentioned, the cards document, and it functions just the same as other document types. So for those of you who are developers, you've got a thumbnail, you can check which cards are available, not yet drawn, which cards have already been drawn. You can deal cards out to other card stacks, whether it's to a hand, to a pile, to another deck. You can deal out cards. You can draw cards from some other document into this one. You can shuffle this card stack. You can reset it, sending all the cards back to their original locations. You can customize how cards are sorted within the stack, so different game systems may need ability to customize the sort order for like what order cards are, so you can do that. And then there's some internal methods for handling some things, as well as those interaction dialogues that I showed you for like the deal prompt, the draw prompt, the pass prompt. So that's all in the cards document in the API that you have access to. It's pretty concise, it's pretty clean. I think the code is readable, the documentation's hopefully pretty readable, so I think this is like a good moment for those of you who are interested in this to really dig in and start looking through this API and seeing how it's working for you. The companion is, of course, the single card document, which is embedded within the parent cards. Card has a back image, it has a face, it has a back, it has a face, this is the current face. As I mentioned, there could be multiple faces, but this is the current one, is the card face. It has a back image, it has a front image, maybe, it has a name, it tracks the source of where did this card originate from, like what deck originally created it, or what does it like belong to fundamentally. Some other sort of convenient sort of status getters for like, is there a next face, is there a previous face, etc. And then some card specific APIs. You can flip the card to a different face, you can pass the card to another collection of cards, you can reset the card back to its original parent. That would be like returning it back to the deck that it came from. You can display that card as a little chat message. That's something that I didn't show yet, so just using the API. There's not a way to do this in the UI yet, but if I do like, much like with roles, if I do like card.toMessage, we'll get a message in chat that just shows the card that was played. And that's extensible, so that you can customize. We need to do a little bit more work to make that more easily configurable, but you'll be able to customize like what's the chat message appearance of a card when that card is played. So that's my kind of whirlwind overview. So normally we like cover a lot of stuff and then take questions. I think at this point I will take a couple of questions about cards specifically, just while it's like fresh in everyone's mind, and it'll also give Kim a chance to weigh in on some things, because I've just been talking and like kind of dominating the conversation so far. Question from Kalego about what sort of hook API is in place for this. Is there hooks for specific events like draw or pass, or is it all handled with on update? Good question. Currently, it's all handled with on update, although where hooks would be well served to be added to the API is something that's the type of feedback that I think we're looking for as part of the testing phase. So, we didn't go crazy with adding a ton of stuff. It's relatively, Spartan at the moment. It's sort of bare bones, like does what it needs to do. But, getting some of that extra bells and whistles added is what we'll be trying to do. Question from Craft01, will there be a way to trigger effects that would apply to an actor? I assume that means with cards. Not necessarily directly, but I don't know, Kim, do you have thoughts about how you know a little bit about the cards model, you're familiar with active effects? If you were wanting to sort of combine things together, do you have thoughts about how you might accomplish that?
Sorry, I was reading the chat a bit. Which question was this?
This was from Craft01. Question, will there be a way to trigger effects that would apply to an actor?
Yeah, well, I suppose that kind of ties into the hooks question. Hooks for when you draw particular cards. There's actually quite a few questions here that go into that. Questions about whether they belong to actors. So cards and decks are world objects. So the permissions are player-based. Systems are able to do their normal work to embed top-level entities in others by just linking IDs or UUIDs as normal. So some sort of hook that when a particular card is drawn, a lot of that stuff will depend very much on your system. So it's hard to really provide a really high-level API for that. But yeah,
I
hook
think
into when a card is drawn and then apply an active effect.
And bearing in mind, if systems require this specifically, systems can add additional objects to the data model for cards. So if a system needed to track the relationship of like which actors own which cards or something, that's something that could be added as part of the system data as like an array of IDs or something. You can also use flags, of course. So if you're not developing a system, if you're just developing like a cards module, you have all the power of flags on both the card and the cards documents that you can use. So I think, certainly this type of thing is possible where if you want to program certain cards to have effects contained within them, and then when that card is used, it applies the effect to the actor, you have the ability to create that sort of data and modeling pipeline using the APIs that are provided. It's not something that happens out of the box, though. Let's see here. Scrolling down a little bit. Question from Florian, what happened to my man bun? I had to cut it eventually. But yeah, hair will regrow. I don't know if I'll grow it long again or not, but we'll see. Let's see. Elysium Blazing asks, are cards really that popular? Serious question. You've never felt like you needed them. It's a good question. I mean, I think one thing we didn't talk about is why did we build this, right? I think, for many of you who have been following along, you may know the answer to that, but why we prioritized cards as part of V9 is because that was the winner of our community feature vote. So more than any other major feature that was on that ballot, on that poll, cards were the most voted, most requested feature to have added to Foundry VTT. So I think it's the kind of thing, Elysium, that some people just never use cards in their role-playing games, and that's totally fine. I mean, occasionally maybe you're playing Strahd and you need a Tarokka deck or what have you, but aside from that, or the tavern game of 3 Dragon Ante or whatever, or aside from that, some game systems that a lot of people play, it doesn't come up. You don't use cards, and that's fine. For some game systems, they depend crucially on cards, and cards are a core mechanical component of the gameplay loop that they have. And I think, it's really for those systems that this was a big feature gap that I think a lot of people were interested in seeing closed. And so, yeah, and also, it would be nice to occasionally see maybe some board games or something like that on Foundry. Obviously, like, licensing is a little bit different, and we'll see, about how that would happen. But, the components that Foundry has of having a table, having pieces, having cards, it opens a lot of possibilities in terms of the types of games that can be played on the platform. So, that's, I think, some justification for why this got such heavy weight in the community feature vote. Drogna Dice, looking forward to when Cards So Nice comes out, so all the players can see 3D cards flop down on the canvas. It's an amazing idea. I'm not sure that I or we have the internal courage required to try and create that type of system, and I certainly don't want to commit any community developers' time to that either. But I do think that there will be some community devs who just really enjoy working with this card system and want to take it to the next level. So I look forward to seeing what gets created there over time. Question from Sir Merod: are decks the parent structure of which piles and hands depend on, or can you have those before a deck is created? Yes, Sir Merod. There are 3 different independent types of cards documents. You don't have to have a deck. There's no hierarchy there. You can create a hand just on its own, or you can create a pile just on its own. The purpose for decks, though, is there is a kind of built-in assumption that cards have this concept of an origin, and the origin is a deck. So the idea, and systems can break this assumption a little bit, but the core relies on it, which is there's this assumption that cards belong fundamentally to some sort of origin pack, origin deck, and we use decks for that. I think that's a fair assumption that decks is kind of where cards are at home, and then during the phase of play, cards leave a deck and go into someone's hand or go into someone's pile. But at the end of the day, they belong sort of fundamentally to the deck from which they originated. Anything jumping out at you, Kim, as a question you want to tackle? While you look, I'll take one more from Skimble. Is the goal to build a card character sheet model so you could have interactable widgets on a drawn card? Yeah, good question, Skimble. So one thing I didn't showcase, but I should have, is you'll notice that each of these sheets has the kind of cog option at the top next to the close button for configuring which sheet this uses. So much like actors and items, cards and card sheets support custom sheet registration. So modules and systems can build a custom sheet for how they want to visually represent a deck or visually represent a hand, and it makes it really easy to make that custom sheet the default UI for this. So if you wanted to have like a custom view of your hands, your hand of cards arrayed out in this beautiful like visual fan with some buttons, some widgets, some drag and drop interactions, you could make that entire UI UX as a sheet that would override the default sheet for the hand. So just like actors and items can have custom sheets, so can cards, and that's going to make it really easy for our community developers to create like really interesting interfaces to use for this system.
So one of them was from Flow Radical, will we be able to create cards individually like we can items, or act more like active effects? So I took this one because this is something we discussed internally a little bit, and it just adds a little bit extra complexity where it's perhaps not needed. So if you want to create a single card, you can create some sort of special deck which wraps a single card, and you can encapsulate that up however you like if that's what you need for your system. But there's no support for like top level cards just by themselves like items.
You can, as a module developer or a macros or in the API, you can create a unattached card object you won't be able to like store that to the database on its own outside of the context of a deck that it belongs to. But if you need to say like create a card in memory to do something with it in a sort of transient or ephemeral way, you can do that. You can create sort of temporary cards. But yeah, in terms of like permanence and data storage, individual cards belong to a greater stack of cards, and that's where they get saved. Question from Arcanus Zed that's a little bit unrelated to cards, but it's related to what I just mentioned, is will custom sheets be available for other document types? Yes, that's something we plan to do. I don't know if we'll do that in V9 or not, but I think we might. It might be something that's like a quality of life thing that we can add in the rest of V9. So for like journal sheets, roll table sheets, I'd like eventually to get to the point where all documents can have this same experience with regards to registering sheets and choosing which sheet the document uses. Let's see here. Officer Hath asks some question about nested decks. We don't have support for nested decks. I'd have to think a little bit about how that might work. One thing that I am planning to build later in V9 is the ability to have sort of a simple like deck builder UI where you might have certain low-level decks and you want to combine them together to make sort of a meta deck. This could be as simple as like you just need 2 poker decks to play a game of rummy that requires 2 decks of cards or something like that. But it could also be for like a CCG or something where you have cards from multiple decks that all get combined together to create a larger deck from which you play. I think that's a utility that probably will exist in the core software at some point. All right, go ahead.
There's a question on HTML content in cards, which was a good one. So cards have just a text value that you can use for anything. So you could put HTML in there, and additionally, there's this toMessage function which Andrew talked about earlier, where you can place it in the chat. Also, chat messages can have their HTML content.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And yeah, certainly we didn't make them pretty for the initial prototype, but the description fields on both an individual card as well as on a deck, those can support full HTML. All right. And yes, Bad Ideas Bureau, those text fields are sanitized, so you're limited to the same set of HTML tags and attributes that you can use, say, in a journal entry.
Which is loads. Yeah, it's a large set. All
right. Well, I think that's hopefully a fun preview of cards for those of you who have been eagerly awaiting a first look at this. Now, I hope that those of you in chat have found the cards support preview to be exciting. I was thinking to myself a little bit in preparation of this stream, like, we've done a lot of hard work to build this. I hope that people will recognize that, we don't get to like cards so nice. We don't get to like, a UI UX that resembles, Hearthstone overnight, right? And I think people probably are imagining maybe the end state of like playing a game and it's flashy and visually and there's great feedback and stuff like that. So, we're not there yet, but underneath all of that, there's a lot of important infrastructure and architecture and foundation that needs to exist. And so that's what you're seeing here is that you're seeing the underlying kind of cornerstones of that system.
You got to build the foundation first, and that's something that's very important for Foundry. That's what's enabled all of these amazing modules in the first place, just having that solid foundation.
Yeah. And allow me to cover myself by saying, please don't try and go make Hearthstone. Hearthstone is a copyrighted and, that's property of Blizzard. Let that be property of Blizzard. Don't try and do that. But as an example of the type of user experience that you might have with a card game. All right. Let's move on. I think that's a good overview of cards. We've got a lot of other ground to cover because there's so much in this update beyond. I mean, cards is sort of the big one, but so much in this update beyond just cards. So I'm gonna go ahead and move into the blow by blow section of the notes. And Kim, why don't we cover these together and talk about some of the other stuff that we've done. Let's talk about breaking changes for a little bit because that affects the developers that are in the audience who are thinking ahead about their their modules and the upcoming V9 release. So I'm going to read through a couple breaking changes. Kim, feel free to jump in at any point if you have some perspective on any of these. So first off, in the ambient sound data object, we removed type as a field. So there used to be a singular type field in an ambient sound, and this also applies to ambient lights as well. We did the same treatment for both document types. There used to be a type field, which was kind of like local, global, universal. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this when you're configuring a light, that those were options that you would choose from. Well, that's gone now. There's no more local, global, universal for lights. What there is there's two different checkboxes, which these booleans replace the existing drop-down for local, global, universal. And they apply for both sounds as well as for lights. The first one is constrained by walls. So this allows you to choose whether your light source is constrained by the presence of walls or not. Now this is the default, and this is what a sort of local light would have been before. And a light that's constrained by walls, I move it to the edge of this. It's a good opportunity for me to showcase some of the beautiful V9 lighting system for those of you who haven't seen it yet. The beautiful adaptive lighting. That's probably a little too intense, so I'll go for just a little bit lower luminosity on this one. But yeah, the really beautiful adaptive lighting system in V9. It's so nice, and some of you maybe haven't seen this before. I won't spend too much time on pretty lights because we did that last stream, but yeah, it's really pretty. I hope it comes across well on Twitch, but once you get your hands on this, I think everyone's just going to be over the moon with how beautiful the lights are. Anyways, mechanically, if your light says constrained by walls, then yes, it's going to, as I move it to this corner, it's going to be constrained by the presence of the walls of this little tavern. If I remove constrained by walls, then something went wrong. We found our first bug of the dev stream. All right. Well, I don't know. In theory, this should have done something a little different. I told you that I did warn you that V9 P2 was a prototype. I don't know. This was certainly working before, but you can tell from the circle, if not from the visual appearance of the light, that it is no longer constrained by walls. Now it should be actually rendering the light, and for some reason it's not, and I don't know why, but we will certainly look into that. But yes, anyways, in theory, once this feature is working properly, you will uncheck constrained by walls, and you'll notice that instead of this sort of chunk taken out of your light, it would be clipping through the wall and illuminating the interior of the building as well. So that's one feature, and that was the difference previously between local versus global light type. There was, however, previously this universal light type, which was difficult to explain. It did this unique thing of providing a source of vision where it would always allow you to see that portion of the map, even if you don't have normally vision in order to do it. So, for example, like this character inside the tavern, if you have him controlled, here's our little adventuring party relaxing at the table after a difficult adventure. If I have Krusk here controlled, he can't see. He can only see what's inside the tavern in his, in his line of sight. If I make my light source out here to provide vision, we'll see if this one works. Yeah. Okay. So I now have Krusk controlled, and he's still able to see this light outside the tavern because it acts as a source of vision for the player. So you can use this in all kinds of creative ways to sort of make a specific effect within your scene, but it means that as you're moving around within the tavern or you're moving around outside, you would always be able to see this section of the map that's illuminated by the lights. Question from Steady Eddie, wouldn't all lights provide a source of vision? Not quite. So normally a light provides illumination, but not vision. In order to provide vision, you have to have a vantage point in order to see the light. So as an example of the difference, this fireplace provides illumination, but it does not provide vision. If Krusk is on the other side of the fireplace, you don't see the light over here. The illumination is there, but you can't see it because you're outside and you don't see through the wall. So the illumination exists without a source of vision to perceive that area. Because in this moment, only Krusk himself is the source of vision. I'll give him a limited angle, for example. So Krusk himself is a source of vision here, but he's not able to see the inside of the tavern. Oh, I think I maybe found my second bug for the stream, which is rotating a token with a limited angle of emission vision cone has just caused my GPU memory to max out. So that's a fun... Bingo! Yeah, as you say. Stream bugs.
There was a bug that rotating with a limited view angle just didn't rotate at all, and I think I fixed that, but I guess
well, it's okay.
In a great way.
We did warn people up front that the prototype is, here there be dragons. It's the brand new sort of latest, potentially least stable code. So we make it available for people to help us start testing, but it does come with some loaded words of caution. Certainly, though, there's clearly an issue with limited angle of emission light sources. So I'm going to I'm going to close that guy, and I'm going to just leave Krusk alone now, and then we'll try and fix that bug. But yes, anyway, so that hopefully gives an explanation of the difference between providing vision and not providing vision. And the same applies for sound sources. So my fireplace sound here, I can choose whether or not it's constrained by walls. And if it's not constrained by walls, then you'd be able to hear the sound of this fire outside of the building, even on the outside of it. There is no sense of like sound sources providing vision. That's sort of more of a light thing. But yeah, so we got rid of those types in favor of some more explicit Boolean flags. Another breaking change, and I commented on this as a breaking change because it affects the data model going forward. There is a built-in automatic migration that if you had the old type in your sound or in your light, it's going to automatically convert that data for you. You don't have to worry about migrating it yourself. So it is a breaking change in a sense, in that like technically if you're creating new lights or new sounds, you should create them using this new API. It's not a breaking change in the sense of like it's going to break anything that already existed. That will migrate automatically so you don't need to worry about that. Next up is we refactored some places in the system where entity was still used in variable names or class names, and we renamed those so that they refer to documents now. So in the longer past for Foundry, we had this concept of entities, but we ended up changing the nomenclature there to refer to documents. So we're trying to replace everywhere that refers to entities with documents. So there were a couple of consts that we did need to rename. So entity types became document types, folder entity types becomes folder document types, game system entity types becomes game system document types. The entity sheet configuration, which is the UI used to choose like which sheet is used for a certain, actor or cards, that class is renamed from entity sheet config to document sheet config. I think that's and I guess lastly, in terms of this particular change, there were a number of localization strings that have to do with entity that were no longer used, and those are now removed. So yeah, just a general sort of cleanup from some things that were not handled there in V8. Some other little breaking changes. The sidebar has been refactored to have a lot better standardization. I'm not actually sure. I think this is a breaking change because it's possible that certain modules or systems were like overriding the sidebar templates that were used, and if so, this might affect them. I'm not sure this is actually going to break anyone's anything, but it in theory might. Our sidebar directories for scenes, actors, items, journal entries, roll tables, cards, and audio playlists, they all have a lot more, and macros also, they all have a lot more standardization and reusability of their code and template structure. And so it eliminated like several hundred lines of code that we were able to get rid of. So it was a really nice, really great refactor for us internally. Oh, there I go again. Something is... I wonder if I need to delete this Krusk token. I've really done wrong by trying to showcase a limited field of emission token here. I'm just going to delete this guy programmatically, maybe. Get him out of the scene.
Well, the next one is font size declarations, so I'll just talk a little bit about that. This ties in with some general CSS changes we made to the core CSS stylings. That might be mentioned later, but if not, I'll just talk about it now anyway. But we were going through to add some CSS variables, and since while we were doing all of that, we thought it might make sense to also, since we're touching all of the font sizes anyway, we might want to convert them to rem units, which have a few benefits. Main ones are like accessibility. If you need to increase the font size globally, you can now. But aside from that, it's just like rem units are just sort of best practice for CSS font sizes these days. The other CSS changes with the variables, we've done a bit of work there to just take a lot of the colors mainly, but there are a few other things, structural things that we've put into CSS variables to make it easier to re-theme the application. There's potentially more we can do, but some might take some time to in fact restructure the CSS entirely. So this is like a first pass which you can grab with the prototype, play around with, and give us feedback. What is good, what isn't, if you need more.
Yeah, I think, for folks that want to re-theme the software to, match the look and feel of a game system or something, this is going to make it, in theory, a lot easier to do that. Not everything is declared as a variable, as Kim said, but I think this will be a great start in terms of like making it really easy to apply some changes that will carry throughout the whole software without needing to individually override a large number of rules that require you to have some technical expertise around where these variables are used. So this is like part of a larger initiative that, you know, we're going to be working on for a long period of time. I mean, pretty much forever. Like, we're always working on this type of stuff, but this provides us a better framework to use to keep making CSS investments.
Yeah, so some just briefly, there was a bit of question about like whether it does the sidebar width. So things that are easy to change in one place don't really have a CSS variable, or we opted to not do CSS variables because those are handled by just normal CSS. The variables are really for places where things were spread out all over, so you want to be able to just change it in one place and it changes everywhere. That was generally what we were going for, but again, feedback is welcome.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, my opinion is that there's nothing wrong with just using, you know, regular CSS rules in places where like this is one rule that applies to one selector. You know, you can just use that rule. I mean, if you start using that same thematic concept lots of different places, I think that's where the variable will be most useful.
Right.
All right. So yeah, thanks, Kim. Moving on. So we've covered breaking changes. So let's talk about new features. We talked about card support. So I'm going to skip over the first several of these, which all have to do with cards. But you know, just to recap what we showed earlier, we've implemented the basic foundation of card support. That includes the cards document as well as the card embedded document. Standard APIs for manipulating cards, moving them around, you know, UI facing dialogues for deal, draw, pass operations, configurable sheets for the cards, the card themselves, basic UIs for hands, piles, decks, the ability to edit, configure, create, delete in the interface that accesses those underlying APIs. We also included a lot of built-in card images that you'll be able to find within public, in the core data, public cards. There's a dark gold, which I can show here. Dark gold theme of cards. There's also a light, soft theme of cards, which is sort of a more like gray, black, gray, red theme. So two different card themes, these faces that have the Foundry logo on them and everything that you can use for your card games. Obviously, I look forward to seeing artists and illustrators who make their own decks of cards. I can't wait to see like a beautifully illustrated like tarot card deck in Foundry. Like, that's going to be so cool. Creators who make that kind of thing. I really look forward to seeing that.
Completely.
All right, so moving on from card support, let's talk a little bit about architecture and infrastructure. So we've updated to Electron 14, which is a pretty big step for the Electron wrapper. That moves us to Chromium 93, as well as built-in Node 14.17. Now, for Electron 14, if you want to get Electron 14 for Foundry, you would have to reinstall the software from scratch. So the built-in updater, it updates all the code and dependencies and everything within the current Electron version. It does not update the Electron version. So if you want to update the Electron version, you have to reinstall by downloading from the website. You can just install over top of the one you already have. So if you want Electron 14, you can get it by installing the latest version from the website. And that, as I said, it brings us to Chromium 93, which adds some new nice features on the Chromium side. Node 14, we're already using Node 14, so this is just a minor version improvement on top of that. We have a new configuration option for performance improvement, which I think will benefit a lot of you quite a bit. So I return to the setup menu, and on the configuration option page, there is a checkbox for compress static files. and it will be enabled by default. You may, under some circumstances, wish to disable it. But with compress static files enabled, all of your static text content that the Foundry VTT server serves to the client, so that would be like Foundry.js, CSS files, module scripts, JSON files, HTML templates, anything that's a sort of text type and lends itself well towards compression will be automatically compressed server side before it's sent to the client. So we did some comparison around network speeds and payloads for this. And basically the overwhelming evidence is that the reduced time to load the page from transferring less data over the network strongly outweighs the increased time due to the need to compress and uncompress the files on both the server and client side. So this is a really nice improvement that gets us to faster load times and smaller amounts of data transferred over the network. And this will be especially valuable for those of you who are maybe have like more network latency between yourself and the server host. So the more like latency or difficult connection issue that you may already have, the more this is going to help you compared to the previous state of the software. So that I think is a really nice approach. I see City No Doors asks about like, what about minifying the stuff? And minification is kind of an alternative to this, where via minification, the file itself would sort of be permanently compressed. The reason we don't like minification in this use case is that we can't ensure that everyone does it. Like we can't force module developers to minify everything. They may not want to. We also don't necessarily want to do it for our own code because Foundry is so moddable. We want users to have the experience of being able to open the Foundry source code and read it with open the Foundry source code and read it with the full commentary sort of openness of the client-side API without having it be minified or obfuscated, because being able to see and debug the code, I think, is critically valuable. And you can do that with source maps, I know. But if you're compressing... Yeah, if you're
transferring a source map as well.
Yeah, then you're transferring the source map. So doing the compression approach, I think, is, in my opinion, a better solution for our use case than doing minification, because it allows you to have on the client side the uncompressed version, single file, but it just reduces the size of the packet that needs to be transferred over network. Question from Shemetz: why would anyone choose to disable compression? Would it change what we see on the client in any way? One of the reasons you might disable compression is if you're running Foundry behind a reverse proxy and you're handling gzip compression at the proxy layer. So for example, you might be using Nginx or Apache, and you might have your proxy server handling file compression for you. It shouldn't hurt to do like double compression, but it might cause some weird things, and it generally would result in you paying the performance tax of doing compression twice, but you only get the benefits of it once. So really, you probably only want to use compression either in Foundry directly or in your reverse proxy server, but not both. So that's probably the main reason you would maybe disable it, is if you're already doing compression in a proxy. I think I've started a debate about Nginx versus Nginx, or what have you.
The developers.
It's Nginx.
Nginx.
It's Nginx.
The developers say it's Nginx. So.
Let's see.
Maybe I should mention SQL. I'll keep the chat going for a while.
Yeah. Well, I say SQL, so you can shun me right out into the
My database professor, who was on the SQL committee, told us that it's pronounced SQL.
Well, that's bully for them. I'm just kidding. I'm one to talk because I definitely prefer it when people say Foundry VTT and not Foundry, or anyways.
Well, it's good. Yeah, let's make it official.
Yeah, that's right. Leave it to the Brit to insist on propriety. All right, where were we? Yes, so that's architecture and infrastructure. Another architecture and infrastructure improvement that I'm very excited about because I use it a lot and it was kind of painful and now it's way better, is S3 integration and the performance of browsing S3 files. So I got a nice nudge from a community member who encouraged me to look back into this again. I'd been stymied by this issue in the past, but I revisited it and was able to use a better option of the list objects v2 S3 API to more quickly index and list the contents of your S3 bucket. So if I go to browse for images in my S3, it's way more responsive now. Some of you might have been a bit used to, like, at low levels of your S3 bucket, it being like a little bit slow to pop up with all of the, sort of S3 doesn't have subdirectories, but the key prefixes. And so, yeah, it was slow and not great, and it's way faster now. And so it's just a much more fluid browsing experience of traversing your S3 data with this change. So yeah, happy times on that. Huge buff. Another one is we changed our server-side fetch requests to use the recommended abort controller pattern. This is kind of just a tech, hardening architecture improvement where it ensures that fetches that don't ever conclude are appropriately aborted, and that those requests are completely torn down and shut down on the server side. It's not a huge thing. And one last one in terms of there was a problem where if you run out of disk space and try and launch your world, it could end up wiping the contents of your world JSON file because there was no space to write to disk, and so it would remove the file and then try to write it, but it couldn't write it because it was full, and you'd end up with a place where your world could no longer be used because you'd wiped your own. I mean, it could be repaired, but anyways, this was a very sort of edge case issue that could happen if you fully ran out of disk space, and so this is a better protection against that, where we will write the changes to the world JSON file in a more safe way that will tolerate this problem. All right, improvements for the game canvas. I have a shiny feature that I can show you all. I hope you're going to like it. We hadn't planned to do this feature. A little bit of a fun story. We've started a policy on the team of having kind of a free project Friday on the last Friday of the month, which allows team members to pick a little side project that is something that's exciting to them, that isn't something that we've needed to prioritize, and you can just sort of take the day to hack around and build your little side project. And so this is fun because there's always little neat ideas that we have that we just can't justify prioritizing otherwise because there's just so much that we have to do. And it's cool because this can result in some fun stuff that maybe we don't always prioritize some of the little fun stuff as much. And so I want to show you a feature that came out of our first free project Friday, and we liked it enough that we merged it into the code for V9. So the feature is
the D&D system as well now.
Oh yeah, it also has support in the D&D system as well. So I'll show that in a minute. But the feature itself, where was I in the notes? Oh yes, is scrolling status text, and it allows you to have a sort of scrolling text notification associated with any canvas object that has a HUD. So tokens have HUDs, tiles have HUDs, drawings have HUDs. And so what you get here is, for example, and there's several ways you could use this, but as an example, on this Krusk token, if I activate the shield effect, it shows a little sort of pop-up scrolling shield notification when the active effect is added or removed from the token. And developers can use this, to do all kinds of things. There's an open API that you can create these little status text messages for anything that you want. And you can, for example, in the 5e system, if a character takes damage or gets healing, you can add a little notification that they've sustained damage or sustained healing. It works for groups of tokens as well. So suppose there's 3d4 damage that goes out. Oh, let's reveal it. 3d4 damage goes out, and all three of these characters are wounded by that damage. It would show for anyone who can see those tokens, it would show that that they've taken that damage to the face, I guess. So you can configure the color, the font, the placement, which direction it scrolls in. You can do all kinds of stuff. Question from Lord Zeal about, are they Pixie or Dom? They're at Pixie, and so they're linked to the position of the token that is so you notice if I move the token while the text is scrolling, the text kind of moves along with the token. So it's part of the token's HUD in the Pixie layer. This was a cool feature that you can do really lots of things with. We did an basic implementation for the 5e system, where suppose I have an actor here that has a lot of health, so 90 hit points. You'll notice that the size of font is suppose it's 20 damage. Oops, 2d0. Let's do 3d10. Maybe I'll get a good roll. Yeah, 20. There we go. That's good. So suppose they take 20 damage. You'll notice that the numbers are bigger for people if this was a larger percentage of their health. It's a little bit smaller for people if it's just a small sliver of their health. Some people might like that, some people might not. I guess it gives away a little bit of intuition about how significant a piece of damage was. Maybe we make that an option. But anyways, all of that stuff, the font size, how fast it scrolls, it's all configurable through the API. So I can show those of you in the audience who are API developers who are getting excited about showing scrolling notifications on stuff, I can show you what this looks like. So it's a method of the object HUD, which tokens have, tiles have, etc. And so there's this API function, create scrolling text. You can pass it a string of some content. You can pass it an anchor point, which is where does the text start with respect to the object. You can pass it a direction, which is in which direction does the text scroll with respect to the object, a duration in milliseconds, and some other options like an amount of jitter, font style, stuff like that. And then it will animate your text and it will scroll it for you. So I can show an example. So for example, in this, let me pull up my console. I'm going to cover my face for a moment. So if I reference, the token HUD for this token, I can create scrolling text, and I can just say hello, and I can print whatever I want on the token. So it's really easy to use. You can use it in macros. You can use it in game systems. You can customize the font size, the color, the direction that it scrolls in, anything you want. And you can use it for whatever you think would be useful to display a message for.
Very cool. Everyone's asking who wrote it, but it was Andrew.
It was me. But
it was your project.
It was my project. But the visibility is linked to the visibility of the token. So if the token is hidden, I guess I only have the player view here, or the GM view here rather. But let me load up a player view for a second. So on the left is my player view. On the right is the DM view. So if the token, say, takes damage and it's hidden, like the visibility of the text is also hidden from the players. But if the token is visible, then the text is visible to the player as well. So it's linked to the visibility of the token, the visibility of the text. Hopefully that is a quick answer to one of those common FAQs. All right. Well, hopefully that's a feature that you all find pretty neat. Obviously, it's up to, if you want it to show things like this token takes a certain amount of damage, it is up to the game system to do that. So the next D&D 5e release will have support for this. There's a setting that you can choose at the world level for whether you allow scrolling status text or not, because some people may want to ban it to turn it off. If you as the game master don't like that for your table experience, you can turn it off and it won't be used. But for systems that want the scrolling status text to be shown, you would have to implement this a little bit yourself. And I can just give a very quick preview of what it looks like in the 5e system, how we did this, just to demonstrate that it's not a lot of work required. So we have a token subclass in the 5e system. Our actor, not our token class, our actor class in the 5e system. Pretty much every game system probably has an actor class. When we deal damage or healing to the actor, we have a apply damage method, and that apply damage method includes some extra metadata in its update command. And using that extra metadata in the update command for the actor, we then listen on update to see if this option is present, and if it's present, we just create some text, and that's all there is to it. So we just listen for changes to the actor, and if there was a particular type of change to the actor, show a little bit of scrolling text to display it. So really only, 15 lines of code may be involved to do this. So it's something that if you're a system developer and you like that idea, you can take a look at the 5e system for an example of doing this. All right, let's move on. Next up, some other Canvas improvements. Another performance improvement that we were able to make in this update is that Fog of War Exploration is now a JPEG instead of a PNG under the hood. And that's probably something we should have done a long time ago, but it's good we're doing it now. So it definitely reduces the texture size of the Fog of War texture considerably, which has a lot of benefits. And before I get bandwagoned for not doing WebP, let me explain that we benchmarked it. So I did a lot of testing, and what I found is that the size advantage of WebP was best, but it was much slower because the client takes longer to compress the image to WebP than PNG or JPEG, which are both relatively much faster. So this is a trade-off between the amount of time needed to create the image in JPEG format or WebP format versus the compression gain of using a more optimized MIME type. And so overall JPEG won in this case because our goal is not maximum compression, but speed really matters because this happens when Fog of War is updated and saved. So as you're moving around, you explore some area of the map that you haven't explored before, and every so often the Fog of War exploration state needs to be saved to an image to the database. And so if that process is slow, it makes like you have like visible sort of lag when the fog texture saves. And so since JPEG is fast, it gets the benefits of a smaller file size without the sort of latency of WebP. All right. But yeah, our initial design was to use WebP. That's what I did first. That seemed like the obvious thing to do. I did WebP, and then I was like, it's a little bit jerky, I guess, when it saves. I kind of noticed the hitching, and so I looked into the speed difference, and I discovered that it was slower. So PNG was fast, WebP was slow, but JPEG was like a nice sweet spot. Because we don't need transparency for the fog. We don't need transparency in this case. Speaking of image file formats, we added support for AVIF. Kim, in the spirit of debating acronyms,
Sure.
is this an AVIF? An AVIF?
I have no idea.
Well, I think we need to make it an official decision. It's definitely an AVIF.
What does it stand for again?
AVIF.
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 Yeah.
Use the AVIF.
Yes.
Love
there
the
you
AVIF.
go.
The AVIF will save you much disk space.
It's decided.
Yes, it's decided.
Decreed.
But yeah, so it's supported now. I see question about why not GIF. The why not GIF is very simple. It's just that Pixie doesn't support it for rendering on the canvas, and it's very complicated to do that otherwise because you would have to read the individually buffered frames of the GIF, write your own animation loop to turn that into an animation. It's really painful. So it's not supported. We're not going to support it either. So that's it. WebP's better. Use WebP or WebM.
There's like so many, like there's animated PNGs, which I think I've used. I think they work. So
yeah. We made some other improvements to texture sizes for adaptive lighting. I'm nervous to share this because I'm probably going to just like blow something up and show that it's not working. But yeah, okay, it's fine. If you were to drag a really large light texture, it was previously causing some issues because the underlying render texture would get to be very large that would cause some problems. So we severely constrain the size of the render texture now so that we stick to using small textures only, even if your light size is very small. But yep, that's that. Interface and applications. So we already talked about CSS variables. Kim, you did some tremendous work there. You also did some interesting work on refactoring the HTML layout of the top level HUD. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, this came about because there's a history here. There was first some people have quite small displays. There's like a minimum that we support, but if you're at that minimum and you have a lot of modules that add scene controls, your scene controls start to spill off the page. So first we stopped that from happening, but then there was an issue where if you collapse and expand the players list, it doesn't interact at all with the scene controls, and it can't really, because, well, you can do it with JavaScript, but because they're like fixed elements, they don't really, they're not aware of each other's sizes CSS wise. So you could write some JavaScript code to do it, but you shouldn't need to, because this is what HTML, CSS, and layouts are all about. They're for doing this sort of thing. So to resolve that, we basically moved everything into a big Flexbox layout on the top. This has a few advantages, not just for the scene controls, but for instance, the navigation tab at the top is now aware of the sidebar size. So it will, if you've minimized the sidebar, for instance, it'll fill in that extra space. And there's some modules I know of, at least like Small Time, which they place objects on the HUD as well with sort of fixed positioning, and those can make use of this now. So it could quite easily, like Small Time could quite easily slot into the UI left column that we have there, and then it would also react to the player list without any JavaScript. It would also react to the scene control, or the scene controls would react to its size and properly wrap. So a lot of advantages. It will break some modules, not all of them. If you're using fixed positioning, then chances are it won't change anything. Your stuff will stay fixed. We'd encourage you to move it into the layout if it makes sense for you. There were some breakages, but the ones I saw weren't too hard to resolve. But again, grab the prototype, take a look, see if there's some feedback.
Yeah, I think it's a really good refactor. It is one that will cause the need for some modules to update a little bit, because if they were previously placing their HTML directly into the body, they may be getting pushed around a little bit in the Flexbox layout. So if you weren't using fixed positioning, you're probably still fine. But if you were not using fixed positioning for your HUD interface element, you may need to update a little bit the way that's placed in the CSS layout in order to take advantage of the new Flexbox design. But yeah, it's a really good change, and the start of a new version in the prototype phase is the right time for us to make this type of change. So I saw a number of you asking about the frame rate meter. That's a little feature that I added in V9 because we were doing all the performance work on like new lighting and stuff. And so it's just a setting in the core settings. There's a show FPS meter. You can turn it on or off. But if you want to see sort of what sort of frame rate performance you're getting, you can turn a frame rate monitor on. It's just a little thing in the layout. That was not new this version. That was last time in P1.
Yes, and that's also in the new Flexbox.
Yes, that's also part of the Flexbox layout. So yeah, so like I think it's a good way to demo it actually. Like if I collapse the sidebar, you notice that the FPS meter slides to the right to use the space that's now available. As I expand the sidebar, it expands with it. So yeah, so that's a nice example of how the Flexbox just kind of positions things for you without needing to use fancy JavaScript. All right. This one's very nice. Cody's, so there's been a little bit of an absence of like Cody shoutouts this stream. And it's not because he's stuck under the bus. It's because he's been working very hard on some website improvements. And so he has been focused very heavily on that. However, there are a couple of little features that Cody was able to do for V9 P2. And one of them is one that I'm very excited about. And I know that our Discord mods, our moderator team, our helpers team, they're all going to be very excited about it too. In the sidebar, on the settings tab, there is now a button that is called support. And it offers some suggestions for getting help if you need some help with Foundry VTT. So clicking the support button, it has a new pop-out which lists some places to get support. It refers folks to our Discord community as well as to our contact form if you prefer to email us. It also has what's called a support details printout that lists all kinds of useful things like what GPU you're using, what renderer, what's your maximum texture size, how large is the scene that you're running, how many items are in it, how many walls, how many lights, how many actors do you have in your world, how many modules do you have enabled. And this report can be very easily copied to your clipboard, and it can be included in bug reports, it can be included in Discord support communication. So it will make it really easy for people to share, like, what's the setup that they have right now when they reach out to us to get help, so that we can more accurately and more rapidly assist them. And I think that's going to do a lot to help I think our Discord community, our helpers especially, already do a absolutely superhuman job of helping people. I think the level of support that we as a community provide to each other is like phenomenal. And so this wasn't necessarily like something that wasn't working well and we had to fix it, but I think this is just a way to keep making it better. And I think this little support details pop out, making it easy to copy it to clipboard. I think it's going to be really good. All right. This z-index thing about the controls and players, it's sort of related to the Flexbox stuff, but we just tweaked the z-index positioning of those elements a little bit.
Yeah, I think that got superseded by the Flexbox layout, so we can
pretty much now that it's a Flex container, it's not as important anymore. But yeah, if you think it's not necessary, we can pull it out of the notes completely. Yeah. That's a good takeaway. All right, we are almost done with the notes. I know this has been a kind of marathon so far, but hang with us, and we're going to cover just a couple of things. I'm going to be a little bit more rapid fire in these because the API improvements and bug fix sections, they're long. There's a lot of like small things, but I did want to comment just briefly on a couple of them. So API improvements. One thing that is important to point out is that we improved some behavior of importing from JSON, so that if you have an old export that was from a much older version of the game system, now if you import that JSON like an actor or an item into your new, more modern game system world, it will automatically apply the new data model of the system to that document. So that resolves a problem where maybe people had actors or items exported floating around from a long time ago, and when they tried to re-import those, they got stuck. They were missing some pieces of data that the system now expects them to have, and so this is a much better way to handle that import workflow.
Very system specific.
Very system specific, yeah. Some other little improvements to paste, hook, merge object. ActiveEffects got a couple of little changes that can be useful to some of you. So there's a new isSuppressed property that any ActiveEffect document can have. We found this needed in 5e, and we found it useful enough that we thought it made sense to extend it to all systems as an option. There's this situation that can often occur where an effect exists on an actor, but they don't have the ability to use it at the moment, like they don't meet a prerequisite, or there's a necessary condition for the effect to apply that isn't satisfied. And we didn't quite have the granularity we wanted in order to say currently an effect was either disabled or active, but within disabled, you couldn't really tell, is it like disabled by choice, or is it disabled because you can't use it right now? You're not eligible for it. And so flagging effects as suppressed is a way to handle this, where it allows for an interaction between, do you choose for it to be active or not, with, is it forcibly prevented from being active? And so we use it in the 5e system for active effects where you don't meet the prerequisite in order for that effect to be active. And I thought this was a useful concept that other systems can benefit from too. Maybe, but we thought it was useful enough to bring it into core. Another one on active effects is each effect has its own sort of change mode. So you may be familiar with this. Say for on the shield spell, each effect you choose the change mode: custom, multiply, add, downgrade, upgrade, override. What we've allowed is each of these change modes is an integer in the back end, like 0 through 5. And custom is sort of like the core software doesn't know how to handle it, so you at the system level have to provide your own handling if you choose custom. But what we didn't allow is having custom like application modes, so you didn't have custom numbers for what those change modes could be. Systems can now set their own custom numbers. So any integer greater than 5, like if you want to say like specific active effect application rules, like this active effect applies by, after you handle equipped armor, but before you count weapons and, et cetera, et cetera. Like if there's some complex logic for when certain effects or how certain effects apply, you can have a custom integer change mode attached to that effect, which you can provide your own. You can use that as an opportunity, as a way to identify that these effects need to be directed to a certain handling function. Anyway, sorry, that's a little bit in the weeds, but I think that's useful. It's a useful way to give some more power to system developers. We made some improvements to Keep ID. That Keep ID was an option we added in 08, but we just keep making it a little bit better. So Keep ID now affects the IDs of embedded documents as well. So if you have like an actor full of items, if you create that actor data once again, and you don't provide Keep ID, those items are going to get re-identified within the actor with fresh IDs. If you do provide Keep ID, you will get the same internal embedded item IDs within the duplicated actor as well, as from the original one. Another thing with Keep ID is we fixed an issue where it was not correctly working for embedded documents in synthetic tokens. So for unlinked token actors, items, active effects, Keep ID wasn't working properly there. It now will be. Another thing is the to compendium and from compendium methods, which handle transacting the data between a sort of archived and non-archived state. They now also support the Keep IDs option. And what this has allowed us to do is to add some nice improvement to the UI. So for example, if I go here to my actors, if I were to export all of my actors to a compendium, I can choose to keep the document IDs the same as part of that export, which would result in the document IDs in the compendium remaining exactly the same as the ones in the original world. And the converse is also true. So when I import actors from a compendium or any document from a compendium, you can now choose to keep the document IDs the same as the ones that existed in the compendium itself. So that I think in the UI that's a helpful option, but in the API especially that's even nicer because it's going to be useful. It already has proven useful for people like making adventure content, where it makes it easier to create the adventure content within your world, export it all to compendium packs in a way that preserves all of the document relationships between, actors and journals and whatnot.
Yeah, super useful.
Some of this other stuff is pretty low level. I think I'm going to skip over most of it. Let's see here. Sound source is a new one. So in the API, we mirrored the functionality that we deployed for new light sources. So Canvas Sounds is the sounds layer. And Canvas Sound Sources is a map of sound source objects which exist on the scene. And the sound source object controls and is responsible for the computation of the polygon, the way that sound source is placed and visually represented, its shape, its field of effect, its easing, things like that. And so, it's that's a helpful refactoring of the API. I see a good question from Arcanist Zed about does it mean you'll no longer need Scene Packer for relinking? I would not go that far. I think a module like Scene Packer will continue to have some value for people who are using it. I think eventually we would maybe like for a module like Scene Packer to perhaps not be required, without any offense intended to the author who hopefully acknowledges that, it's filling a gap in the core software right now. I think Eventually, we would like to continue supporting features that make it easy to import and export collections of content in a way that Scene Packer does. I think for the time being, Scene Packer will continue to provide some really useful features that we don't yet really have like a good interface to support in the core software. But I think where the borderline there, I think, will be evolving in a way that eventually will, be moving in a constructive direction for what the core supports. We fixed a bug with measurement for hex grids resulting from the cube distance computation. That was a little bit of a tricky one. We got some great feedback from a community member that tipped us off to that problem. Oh, hi, kitty. Hello, cat friend. Aw. Let's see here.
Yep. So that same member, I think I saw him in chat. Saw them in chat a little while ago. Also had some feedback on some more hex grid stuff. Some more changes which we haven't made yet, but I think they play Lancer, which is very hex based focus. So we do want to improve the hex grid. There's like an epic for it, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Bolt. Really appreciate your feedback on that, and we will continue making some improvements in that area. So keep after us with it. This is a fun one. The progress bar used for loading a scene. So, for example, like when I preload the scene here, the little blue progress bar here, we expose that as an API that devs can use if they have like a long-running operation in their system. Say it could be like maybe like you need to do a compendium migration or something. If you want to display a progress bar for it, you can reuse the same progress bar that happens when you load a scene. And so there's an API that you can use to feed, progress updates to that loading bar that you can just kind of piggyback on the existing functionality there. It's pretty simple. It's a very simple API. It basically is scene navigation.display progress bar. So I'll show you what that looks like. Scene navigation display progress bar. You just pass it a label and a percentage, and that's really all there is to it. What's the text label of the task that's running? What's the percentage of completion that it's currently at? It's very simple, but yeah, there's not really much to it. But pass a label, pass a percent, show the progress. Let's see, some refactoring of the audio container, some improvements to visible flags for the combatant, thumbnail getters for the various document classes. Question of how do you clear it? It clears itself when percentage reaches 100. Maybe we can make it smarter or better. If there's new features needed, feel free to make suggestions, but once your progress reaches 100, it will automatically be cleared. Let's see. Some improvements to scroll positioning for multiple scrolling containers within an application form. Some better behavior of radio checkbox node lists in Form Data Extended. I needed this because I discovered some problems with the cards API when I was doing a deal operation from the deck. These radio checkboxes for which hand should the card go to. I found a couple of difficulties in working with that in the Form Data Extended class, so I made some improvements there. Let's see. Yeah, we did a big refactor of the default token configuration, which allowed it to reuse the same code and aesthetic of other things. So when you configure your default token settings, it now looks a lot more like configuring a prototype token or a regular token. So the layout, the labels, the tabs, everything, it's the same. It just has fewer options because you can't configure everything for the default, but that was a nice refactor that removed a lot of sort of unnecessary code. And then a whole boatload of bug fixes. I probably am not going to go through these blow by blow because, I don't think there's any of them that's like major game changers, but there's a lot of really good bug fixes in here, lots of them. And I think that just goes to, making V9 more stable and more reliable. It is still a prototype. As you've seen, I hit a couple of bugs today during my demo. So, be considerate of the fact that not everything is going to be perfect just yet, but I mean, we're really coming along. I think we've done a lot of bug fixing as part of this update, which means we haven't left as much to do later in the V9 cycle, which I think positions us in a really good place for, for hopefully having V9 stable out before too long, although I don't have a date to suggest at this point. All right, well, that's everything. This has been a huge overview of V9 P2. As I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, it's going to be available later today. So if you are eager to play around with some of this stuff, you'll be able to download it from the website later today. We will post an announcement on Discord. Just to reiterate, it is a prototype. It is not stable. It is unsafe for your use in a live game. It is not recommended for actual gameplay usage yet. This is a prototype for testing. It will be stable in the future once V9 gets a little further along, but just don't rush headfirst into this unless you really are willing to help with the testing process. But if you are willing and interested to help with that, your feedback is we eagerly await your feedback. All right, at this point, we need to take a little break, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to do a license key giveaway for those of you in chat, maybe some lucky winners who will get your hands on Foundry Virtual Tabletop, plus perhaps some other goodies. I have some bonus swag to give away, and I will be back in about 5 minutes when we get back from our break, so don't go anywhere. Kim and I will be back, and we'll be doing those giveaways and taking your questions from chat. So save up your questions. We will be back in about 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere. All right, be back.
All right, use.
All right, we are back. Thank you for sticking around, everyone. I'm going to, before we get going with the giveaway, I'm going to go ahead and change up the little music playlist that I've been using today. But first, a shout out to Boy King of Idaho, a talented composer on Patreon, who's the creator who made all of the Peaceful Moments soundtrack that I was playing in the background during the first part of the stream. Great creator, great composer. I really like that playlist for just kind of like some low-key background music when things aren't going crazy in the dungeon. But I'm gonna change it up. I'll go with some Music D20 for a little bit. Another really talented composer on Patreon. So many great musicians. Music D20, in fact, will have some of his work represented in our forthcoming Demon Queen Awakens adventure, which we all look forward to getting out to you. Yeah, anyways, so giveaway time. I know that's what many of you have been looking forward to. Oh shit, I didn't do the table. I gotta pull the table. Hang on. That was my one job, Andrew. You had one job. Let's see. Quick, set up the table. Well, that gives some bonus time for anyone who was late arriving. I can still get you in. Let me get this roll table going here. Usually I do this like behind the scenes, when we're on break, so I'm not like, frantically treading water like a rabid duck during the live broadcast. But no, that's fine. This is fine.
Trying to think about what the other things we did for our Friday projects were. So I talked a bit about my gridless tools, which is very basic, which I will put some more time into when I get a chance. What did Cody do?
Cody was working more on Dungeonator, I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
So
but
it
still needs a little bit more work. But it's yeah.
Is that a secret project?
No, it's not really secret because we did it. We worked on it during the League hackathon a while ago.
Right. Oh, yes, the tutorial world as well. And there's
yes, no, you're right. He was working on the tutorial world with the tooltips.
Some fancy JavaScript library that does like guided tours. It might be called Tor.
Yeah. We're gonna use that like technology prototype. We're gonna use that to try and, as part of an overall initiative to improving the new user experience with Foundry BTT, which is kind of like a long-term meta objective that we have for the next couple months. But as part of like new user experience improvements, that library is going to be really valuable. All right, let me get this table created. Boom. There we go, got it. So V9P2 dev stream giveaway. I've got 295 of you who were signed into chat on Twitch that are now in the roll table. Congratulations to those of you who are eligible for the giveaway, and good luck to everybody. So the rules for the giveaway today are a little bit different, and I'm just gonna spring this on our Twitch mods without any advance warning, so it's gonna be chaos. But I am going to roll one at a time because today you have a choice of prizes, which is that there's not just one option for you. So you can choose, if you're a winner, you can choose a Foundry Virtual Tabletop software license key for yourself or for a friend. That's our usual giveaway. However, we also have some other options today. We have up to 2 annual hosting memberships supported by Foundry Server. If you would like to have if you already have a Foundry key and what you'd like to have is your Foundry game hosted in the cloud on a really high performance dedicated host with Foundry Server. They will set you up with everything you need. It's going to be really fast. It's going to perform great. Don't worry about self-hosting. Don't worry about port forwarding. Don't worry about any of that. If you're interested in just getting Foundry sort of dedicated hosting for you for a year, you can get a annual subscription to Foundry Server as an option. And then the third choice is that we're testing out some merch ideas. It's going to be a while until this really reaches like general availability. But I do have a t-shirt and I can show it. I've been sitting too low for the whole stream, waiting for this moment. Here's my shirt. Here's my shirt. Very cool Foundry logo with the fiery burst design. So if you're interested in the shirt, then you can choose that as a prize option as well. If you're a winner, in addition to saying that you accept, which is normally how you would indicate that you agree to receive the giveaway, I need you to say key, hosting, or shirt. So you'll need to choose which of the three is the prize that you want. So those are the rules. Sorry for making this complicated. We're going to see how this goes. Drum roll, please. And away we go. Our first winner is Danger Boy 440, number 57 on the table. Danger Boy 440. If you are here, Danger Boy, I need to know if you accept this prize, and if so, which of those three options you choose. Danger Boy, woohoo, key please. I like that you were fast to respond. You have my respect, Danger Boy. All right, well done. All right, moving on. Second giveaway, rolling on the table. The Table of Destiny, Armor Piercing Tiger, number 23, Armor Piercing Tiger.
That sounds terrifying.
That does sound very frightening. Armor Piercing Tiger, if you are here, I need to know if you accept this prize, as well as I work for you.
That's Cobalt.
What? How do I not ever know Cobalt's Twitch name?
What?
We've got a lurker. We've got a spy, a secret agent in the chat. All right. Well, clearly these giveaways are rigged. All right, we're gonna roll again, Cobalt, secret agent. You're disqualified, sir. Jared Rhine, number 133, who I don't think works for us, but who knows anymore.
Could be Cody.
Who knows? Maybe it's Cody. Jared Rhine, number 133. If you are here, yes, key, thanks. Jared Rhine, you're very welcome. I will get you a Foundry Virtual Tabletop software license key. All right. Congratulations to you.
Well done.
All right. Okay, so that's the keys are gone now, because there's two of, I should have mentioned that. There's two of each. So there are now left the hosting service, 2, and shirts, 2. So, next up, we've got Bedrident, number 28. Bedrident, number 28. If you are here, do you accept your prize? And if so, which prize do you wish? The hosting service or the Foundry shirt? Or, I don't know. If you don't have a Foundry key, let me know. Maybe I'll change the rules, but we'll see. We kind of do this off the cuff. Bedrident, I think he's not here, so we're moving on. We're rolling again. Igorini 1, number 124. Igorini 1. If you're here, Igorini. Igorin E.
After the first two are so fast.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We've done well so far. Well, I guess we've done well. We drew our own employee and we drew someone who's not here, so we're 2 for 4. It's okay. All right. I don't think Igorini's here either. So we're going again. Link switch. Link switch. If you are here, Links swish.
Oh,
Links
yeah.
Quitish. I'm struggling with this one. I recognize the user from our Discord community though, so congratulations to Links Quitish. But I don't think I have your name right. But that's fine because you are the winner, and I think I saw something in chat. Yes, shirt, please. Okay,
Yep.
we will be reaching out to you to get some details about where we can send that and what size you'd like. So stay tuned. All right, next one. Here we go. Mythanote, number 194. Mythanote. Congratulations to you, Mythanote. If you are here, and if you are interested, you are the winner of either hosting service or a t-shirt. Mythanote says, pass it along. All right. I appreciate that.
Very generous.
That is very generous of you. Thank you very much. Oh, this is Mythano. Okay, I guess that makes sense. That checks out. Subtle variation on the name.
Yeah, that's much more recognizable than
Much more
Armor Piercing
recognizable.
Tiger.
All right. Well, we'll pass it on. We'll give another spin round. Here we go. Looking for a winner. Escrobar. Escrobar, number 81. Escrobar. If you are here, let me know if you're interested in a Foundry t-shirt. Not yet released, special edition, limited edition, may never be printed again. One time only. Or a year worth of premium hosting service with our partner Foundry Server, which will operate for you a high-performance, dedicated server of Foundry Virtual Tabletop, always on, always running in the cloud. Let us know. Escrobar. Going once. Going twice. All right, I don't think so. All right, we're rolling again. We're gonna get there, Kim. We're gonna get there. Kako Suosa. Kako Suosa. Number 38. Kako Suosa, if you are here, would you like a limited edition Foundry t-shirt, or a year worth of dedicated hosting service for Foundry Server? Oh, we are struggling to find someone. No one wants free things. What is this tragedy? So many people who don't want free things. Oh, Kako Suosa, host. I just had to do a little bit of mild shaming. A little bit of mild shaming was all that was required. I'm sorry, Kako Suosa. I take it all back. Congratulations on the free things and the hosting service that you will be entitled to for a year. I hope it works out great for you. All right, we're gonna go at least one more. Oh my gosh. I rolled number 1. I've never done that before, I don't think, on a stream. Number 1, 10 ace games.
That's incredible. What
are the odds? What could possibly be the odds of rolling 1 on a D295? 10 ace games. I can't even imagine that you would need a PhD in statistics to tell me what the odds of that happening are. You would need probably machine learning, and we're gonna really provoke people in chat. So if anyone's sarcasm meter is broken, we're gonna really get you upset right now. Okay, let's see. 10 Ace Games. Did we get anything from 10 Ace Games? I don't know. Don't think so.
I haven't seen anything.
No? Okay, we're gonna try again. Oh, here we go. It's going. 181. Masag 01. It's a massage that ended too early. Masag 01. If you're here, you've won either a shirt, very limited, very exclusive, or a year's worth of paid hosting service with our partners at Foundry Server. Tough times, Kim. Tough times.
Yeah, I'm just trying to read.
We may be setting a record for the most rerolls.
So Masago 1 has written EAEE, and we're in the slow mode, so they can't write another message for another 30 seconds.
Okay, all
To
right.
clarify.
Well, that's okay. We'll accept DAE as a temporary hold on your prize, and if you can let us know if you prefer the shirt or the hosting, one of those two options will be really a great fit, I think, for you. Well, honestly, they both are. I think Foundry Server hosting. Yeah, oh yes, we know you're here. Yes. Okay, we've got that. Masago 1. We're interested in which prize you would prefer.
Slow mode is deactivated.
Yeah.
So the shirt.
All right. You are very welcome. We will
Good
get.
choice.
We will. Good choice.
Good
We will get details from you. We'll send a message to you on Twitch. That goes for all the winners. We'll send messages to you on Twitch and let you know what next steps you need to take in order to get your prize. So thank you for everyone for participating. I apologize to those of you who are not fortunate enough to be a winner today, but we'll have more giveaways coming in the future. Next time we're on Twitch. So, all right, folks, that's it for the giveaway. So all of you can leave now. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, you can, but you don't need to, because we're going to hang out for a little while longer and take some Q&A from chat. So any questions that you have about Foundry, about what we're working on, about the state of development or anything else, this would be a perfect time to ask your questions and we can answer stuff for you. So please go ahead and throw us questions in chat. If you can preface your question with all caps question : that will make it easy for us to pick your question out from the rest of the conversation. Kim, I got a first one for you. Module settings allows for file pickers, but do not provide what the source was. Will this be improved to allow devs to get a proper source for those settings?
Will it be improved? Is there an issue on the tracker that we can track?
I'm not sure, Flamewave. It sounds like you're aware of a problem. I'm not sure that this means anything to me offhand, so it might be that this is something that needs a little report in order to make sure that it is brought to our attention. So yeah, I would suggest if you haven't yet, maybe open a issue in GitLab and make sure that we're aware of this pain point that you're referencing.
Yeah. So short answer that we're happy to do improvements. If you can let us know what exactly is missing. Again, off the top of my head, I'm not particularly sure about that one. But yes, feel free to post that up on GitLab or in our feedback channel. Although I feel like I remember maybe that flying by the feedback channel anyway. But there's one very RTP33 has posted this question a few times, so they're very eager. So I feel like we've got to pick it. Which was the basically like darkness, zones of darkness, which kind of turn off your vision automatically when you're in it. I'll read the full question for you. Have you integrated the reverse of that, which I guess is the reverse of the sort of this light source is always visible? Not quite, but like a zone of fog where you can't see even if you're inside it. I know you have zones of darkness, but I don't think, not to my knowledge at least, there's something to block vision.
The idea would be a zone where if you're inside it, it temporarily blocks your vision from leaving that zone. I think that's a nice idea, and certainly for things like fog cloud or other like heavily obscured, like if you're in it, you know, maybe you don't see anything, or maybe you can sort of see to the edge of that area, but you can't see out. I think that's a nice idea. It's not something that we've scoped out for adding to the software, but like it's an interesting possibility of something that we could explore in the future, I think.
Yeah, there's two. Like it's not clear whether it's just draw walls around that area so you can't see out of it, or if we're talking about 5e, then it's a simple toggle. If you're in this area, then your has vision goes off. You can't see anything at all, and that's honestly something you could do already with probably a pretty small module. I think would do that if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, good shout. Let me take a quick question from Dados Criticos about our Brazilian community. He asked, what do you guys think about the Brazilian community? Just a quick comment that I'm always amazed at how active and enthusiastic our Brazilian community folks are. There's a huge and vibrant, community of players in Brazil. There's also some really, really very cool streamers that I never really understand exactly what they're doing. I don't speak Portuguese. I know, I'll try and follow along a little bit, but it's always so animated. And whenever I pull up, I'll see a Brazilian streamer that's using Foundry and doing something. It's always the craziest shit too. There's just some crazy scenario happening, and it's I wish I knew more about what was happening in this game. But yeah, the Brazilian community, there's a ton of folks that are big Foundry fans, and we're always looking for opportunities to to reach folks in that community. We recently discovered a new streamer that's pretty big following in Brazil that hopefully is going to be starting to produce some Foundry content soon. So I look forward to seeing that come live. I won't spoil it because I don't want to commit them to doing anything on a certain timetable or otherwise. But yeah. Here's a question for you, Ken, from Nealium104. If I wanted to learn how to do modules, what languages do I need to learn?
So Foundry runs on the modern web stack. So the main language you would need is JavaScript, depending on what you're trying to achieve. You can get by with just CSS if that's the only thing you want to change. You can do as little as just some JSON if you're providing translations, for example. And if you're producing modules of just content, you don't need to learn any languages at all, really. You might need to know a little bit about JSON, but that's about it. So the modern web stack, if you're producing something really fun and exciting, then you'll need your combo of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But it really depends on what you need. And there's lots and lots of resources out there to help you get started with building that. We'll shout out the League, extraordinary VTT developers. We have our own documentation knowledge base. There's a community wiki which has lots of good examples and snippets to help you do all sorts of things there. And the Discord as well, where you can ask questions. You can even ask us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good answer. Question from DWNB Dwumb. Once the prototype is done, do you plan on having a Steam release? No plans on Steam at this time. Sorry about that. I know it's something that some folks would like, but there's some pretty key reasons why we're not exploring that path. Question from City No Doors. What's your view on some of the community modules dealing with multiple layers? Any view on improving performance for handling multiple layers? Sorry if you discussed this already today. So definitely like multiple I assume you're talking about vertical layers in a map is something that is definitely not handled very elegantly in the core software at the moment, and so there's a clear opportunity for community developed modules to fill that void and to provide really useful functionality. And so I'm a fan of the work that those modules are doing. I do feel as if eventually I want there to be a core solution to this problem, and I have a design document internal that talks about scene layers and how I think that we might do it and how I think I'd like us to do it in the long term. As far as when that happens, though, well, actually, I call them scene levels rather than layers, but because, anyways, but my idea of scene levels is something that I do expect eventually will be implemented in Foundry Core. I think exactly when, though, is going to be a tough conversation about prioritization because there's so many features that would be really excellent to add to the software, and that is one of them. But I'm not sure it's even that close to the top of my list. There's some stuff that I think is just so important to add, and I mean, I don't know. I think for the time being, I think module developers are providing a really valuable service by enabling some ways for people to create multi-level scenes.
Is it on the Patreon? That option?
It was, yeah. I think scene levels was on there on the most recent option vote, I think. I'm gonna scroll a little bit. Sorry, I'm falling a little bit too far behind current. But
there was a question about will there be something similar to Roll20 where players can pull cards next to the chat as a UI feature? Also, will cards have the ability to change stats, active effects on PC sheets? So we talked about the latter question a little bit already. There's the API is there if your system needs to be able to do that. The core can't really predict what your system will need there, but it's doable. For the UI stuff, you can put cards in the chat. I'm not familiar with how Roll20 does cards next to the chat, but we talked about this again as well a little bit, that the foundation is what's coming in P2, and when that's solid, we can think about more UI stuff.
Yeah. Question from Ealkin. Any chance we could get folders that assign permissions to items inside that as they're created or added to that folder? It's a good suggestion. There's definitely a chance of that. It's just an issue of figuring out when to prioritize it. It's a nice suggestion, though. Question from Shark, who walks like a man. Is there time left for vision modes this cycle? Probably not. I think that's going to have to slide to V10. Just because it's going to be a big enough new feature that if we add it, I think it needs to be added as part of a prototype. And so I think with everything that we've done, the timeline has gotten a little bit too short on vision modes. And so I think that's one that we'll have to further build upon the lighting and vision system next time around.
There's a question from Lord Zeal. Could we have the option for multiple progress bars and to set a progress bar color? I think with modules using this, there will be a lot of them trying to use it all at once in some case. I don't know if you want to take that.
That may be true. You might end up... I think, we could explore... with notifications, for example, you have multiple notifications that will scroll up, and that can get crowded too if you have too many of those. The UX is not great. Enabling multiple progress bars, I think that's a sensible idea, and it would probably have a pretty similar API. I think maybe we'll wait and see at least for one round of updates, and see like, are we finding a lot of contention for that HTML element, or is it not so much of a problem? Certainly, like, there is the possibility for contention, and so it's a reasonable suggestion to say like, well, we should just get ahead of it and support multiple. I think you're probably right. I think that would maybe have been too big a change to make it for this update, though, and so I think I was kind of thinking, well, I can simply expose an API to the existing one, and that's quite a low-hanging fruit sort of value add. I think supporting multiple progress bars, it's a order of magnitude more complexity to do that.
There was a question: when reducing the size of a token, is there a way to have it snap to the center in a grid? Tend to find them filling smaller invisible squares within a square. So this is something that I've noticed when I play on hex grids, because the behavior is less clear what to do. If you're on a square grid, then you can just move them around to whichever of those squares you need, and that's often what you need. But there's no option for center. I don't. Well, there might be. It snaps to like a microgrid, doesn't it? But I'm not sure. For hex grids, yeah, we have an epic for better hex grids, so something like that, I think.
I'm just taking a moment to show some of the amazing artwork from Tome of Beasts for all of these different monsters, like beautiful, full, high-resolution artwork for all of these creatures, and it's so good. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to brag on Tome of Beasts, because it's like a lot of work went into this, and it's such a great collection of monsters for Foundry. You got the tokens, you got the artwork, it's all ready to go. You can bring these guys in at a moment's notice, and they are completely ready to play. They've got like some biographies, they've got artwork, different artwork for both the portrait as well as for the for the token itself, so you can show your players the full horrifying corpulent mass of the corrupting ooze that is entering their nightmares as you drop it on the table. It's really great. It's such a good experience, and the data, like the fact that all of these actors have like full artwork. I don't know, maybe I'm more of like a snob or something, but for me, like, that is such a huge thing. Like, having the visual of what the creature looks like and being able to show it to everyone when I use it in combat, like, that means so much to me. And the artwork is amazing, and like the work that you'd have to go to set up all of these stat blocks and all of these attacks and everything, and I think it's really good stuff.
Sometimes
highly
my
recommend.
description work is just not up to snuff. You're trying to describe truly how horrifying something is, but you just don't have it in the moment.
Yeah.
So the art's there.
All right, so let's see. Let me get another question, and then maybe I'll show a little bit of Book of Lairs as well. Interesting question from Ikabodo. What is the feature you had in your backlog for the longest time, but still want to do one day? It's a good question. I think maybe there's data to help answer this. So if I look at
issues.
Created date, and then I'll go to the last page. So there's card decks, hands, and draws. So we're doing one of them now. Okay, so the next one I guess would be. Oh wait, if I go by the numbers, interesting. It's not actually sorted. It's weird that it says this one is older than others. So I guess 16 default tokens with stylized first letter of name. So I think that might be that's issue number 16. So I guess what I had thought of doing with that is like, you create an actor and it's like it has this sort of mystery man. I just thought it'd be nice.
Mystery man.
It would be nice to have like default tokens where it has like the letter, like if the name starts with A, you would just put it and it has a token and it's like A. That seemed like it would be a nice little touch, and it would be a nice little touch, and we thought of doing that 2.5 years ago, and we've never done it, but it's a good idea. It's a good idea of something we should do. Yeah, there's a lot of really old stuff in here that would be really valuable to use. I mean, there's stuff that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and just for whatever reason, life happens, prioritization happens. There's just reasons you never really get to it.
There was a very quick one about another one from Ikabodo. I have a friend that feels moving to Foundry BTC is too difficult for old school GMs. Is there plans to produce a tutorial to set up your first campaign?
Yeah. Not necessarily a literal answer to that question that yes, we'll have a tutorial for setting up your first campaign. We probably might have that, but just to reiterate that, we are really thinking about new user experience as a kind of meta theme that we want to focus on for several months. And I think part of that is really going to focus on trying to make it easier for new users to load up the application for the first time and to get started and to have some of those common questions easily answered or answered for them with a sort of guided tutorial that will introduce them to the software and to the concepts in a way that is easy to follow and easy to learn from. So I think that's the kind of vision that we would have about improving that new user experience. It will take a lot of work to get there, but I think that's what I want to do.
Someone asked about Patreon, which we covered earlier in the stream, so that's ongoing.
I see someone asking what's issue number 1. I don't know, we'll see. It's probably some confidential thing, like...
Yeah, maybe.
Let's see, issues 1. Maybe it doesn't even exist. Disable token rotation as a token configuration option. We did that one.
Oh yeah,
we did successfully complete issue number 1.
That got a new UI recently, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's in the token config when you go to appearance. It's like the lock.
Lock.
Yeah, lock the token rotation.
Yeah. Slightly. Never seen that.
Question from Revilo Waldo, speaking of setting up tokens being a nightmare of effort. Well, I wouldn't call it a nightmare. I would say I was referring to the creature itself as being nightmarish, but it would take you a lot of time to set up all these creatures from scratch. But anyways, the question is, any news on WotC partnership? Unfortunately, I don't have any news there that I can share. Don't read too much into that. But no, unfortunately, no news. I would like there to be news. I would love there to be news, but that's a very long-term kind of holy grail type of partnership for Foundry to achieve, and I think it's the sort of thing that it will just take time, probably a lot of time, for Foundry to really prove itself in the space, and for the business decision makers at Wizards to decide that it's worth the effort to expand their licensing portfolio. I think we don't expect that to happen anytime soon or overnight or anything. I think it will just take some time, and hopefully the best thing we can do is make Foundry the best that we possibly can, have the biggest and best community that we possibly can, and there will, in theory, eventually be just too much goodness related to Foundry for anyone to ignore. So that's the goal. Let's see here. Question from Muddles. Any thoughts on having a default set of token tiles and tokens included in the core, kind of like the ones on screen for players and objects? Yeah, we have tokens that ship with the 5e system because we have a very neat partnership with Forgotten Adventures to provide those tokens with 5e. But it would be great to have some stuff for all systems in the core. That's something that would be interesting to explore. I mean, we did add a ton of iconography, icon artwork to the core, but yeah.
Okay, scrolling through them. Some questions on pin colors. Don't think we've got a huge amount of customization around there, but
yeah, there's some customization, but it would certainly be an opportunity to add more. So when you add a color, a pin, you can choose the icon color and the text color, but maybe the user is interested in some something else. I don't know. So like I can make this like green coins with red text.
Yeah, I think some presets based on the type of the whether it's a journal or music.
Interesting.
So this is yeah. Yeah.
Good question from Dberg USA Twitch. Sorry if you missed it, but you asked if cards can be placed on the tabletop, and is that planned? We didn't build an interface visually for placing cards on the tabletop as part of this V9 P1, which was very much focused on the underlying data structures and classes and APIs for working with cards. But that's like improving the user experience of cards is something that we're going to work on throughout the rest of the V9 cycle, and so we'll be continuing to make additional improvements for the UX around playing cards. I don't want to guarantee that we're going to make a canvas component for it, but that is one of the things that we're going to evaluate.
Here's a question you might be able to answer. Light/sound permissions are Boolean now. Will expanding them to the same permissions, like with actors/items/notes, be possible in later versions?
I'm trying to think if I understand this question. Which are Booleans right now?
They're Boolean now. So the things that used to be
the global versus local thing?
Yes. Yeah. So
it's not really permissions so much here. It's sort of more like behavior of the light source.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what Havoc Live Killer, I might need a little bit extra clarification around what you have in mind. It sounds like you've got an idea in mind about how you might want to use the system, and if you could maybe elaborate just slightly for me, that would probably be useful. Frankie Liga asks, or it's not really a question, but says, I haven't committed to getting Foundry yet because it's very daunting to start. Yeah, we feel you on that. I think it is like a quite sophisticated program. There's a lot, there's a lot to it. And I think at some point, like, that sophistication isn't gonna just go away. I don't think that's like realistic to expect, but I do think that making it easier to start, making it easier to learn, I think is something that the software should do better. I think once you've got the hang of the core concepts, I think it starts to click because there's a lot of like reused ideas. I think there's a lot of consistency in terms of how things work, that once you start to learn it, I think it does make sense, I think. But how to get started is pretty intimidating, and I think we don't have a great solution for that yet. So hopefully through some combination of us continuing to make improvements there, plus you deciding to give it a try, hopefully at some point we'll welcome you to the fold and get you on board. But whenever you're ready, and whenever we're ready, I guess, when it comes to improving the new user experience.
Any news on, this is from Flo, any news on modern / sci-fi icons?
No news, but it is on our backlog of perhaps eventually trying to identify an icon art set that is comparable in style to the Rexard fantasy art that we purchased for license. And, if we can get something that is in that sort of similar style, but more of a sci-fi bent, I think I'd like to see us add that.
Question about making the scene notes icon chooser a file picker.
The scene notes icon to use a file picker. Yeah, that would be a good idea. Currently, it's a drop down of predefined icons that can be configured for choice for being chosen. And the reason for that was, I guess, to maintain a little bit of like UI consistency, in that like this icon set, they're all kind of in the same style, but it is a limited set. And so I think we're probably artificially restricting what users can do here. I do think the user experience of choosing from a select like this is maybe a little bit better than needing to sort through all of your icons, but
I prefer that personally. But
we might be able to have both. Like, we might be able to have a select and like an icon beside it to choose like a custom icon or something. So I think there's probably a way to have like a best of both worlds there. Question from Lupus Malice on, is there any plans on making tokens with multiple faces part of core? There's modules and macros that can do it, but it still involves some setup. Yeah, that's a nice idea. I mean, so we do have sort of that, in that if a token is created from a wildcard set, when you choose the appearance, you can choose, like, here's like all my commoners. Like, if I want, instead of a halfling, if I want this to be a gnome, a brown gnome, I can choose it. These are sort of like different token faces. I think it functions much in that way. But I think that there are some limitations there that I'm sure you alluded to, that make this maybe not the easiest or best solution for certain use cases. And so it would be nice to consider if there's is that a core feature that deserves some work? It might be. But it is hard to say, because, ultimately, if the appearance of your token changes, if it's purely a cosmetic change, that's a good use case for token faces. But if it's a mechanical change, maybe not. I mean, if you think about like a polymorph or a wild shape in the 5e system, it's more than just looking different. It's that you mechanically are transformed. You have different stats, you have different effects, you have different features. And so that goes beyond just flipping the token face. But
I like to have normal faced vampires, passive faced vampires, and then flip them to angry vampires.
Yeah, that's a nice example of the cosmetic change. Yeah. Let's see. We got a clarification from Havoc Live Killer regarding light/sound permissions. Light, other would be some special magic light that the player sees due to their race or powers. Light, for example, cameras, a player would hack a camera and see from it. This can be achieved with a light. Okay, I see what you're asking about with regards to permissions now, where you might want like certain players to have access to a certain light that others don't. It's an interesting idea. It's possible to do that with modules, but there isn't a core thing that differentiates between like certain players having access or visible access to certain lights. I'll have to let that idea rattle around in my head a little bit.
Yeah, it seems achievable because you can already see tokens based on whether the GM has hidden them. There's some permissions there, so a light source could perhaps be another.
Mm-hmm. Guitar Guy Nick
another
asks...
placeable.
Oh, sorry.
No. Light source could be another placeable that you could perhaps, in the same way, hide or show.
Yeah. Guitar Guy Nick asks about, could there be more core support for token animations with different actions for movement, spells, attacks, etc., different animations for each action? The reason that this is a hard kind of thing to do in core is you don't have the basic data for like what you're animating. You don't, so the token artwork itself is not core, and the action that the token is performing is not core because that's a system level thing. So you've got some piece of artwork that you don't have control over, performing some action that you don't know what the actions are. And then the core software would have a hard time taking ownership of like, how should that look? It doesn't seem like the right place for ownership of how should that look to live. I think you need ownership over how should that look to live in a place that really knows and can understand both like what does this token look like and what is the action it's performing, because those are the inputs that would inform how you would want to animate it. So I guess I view that as good module territory and continued fertile ground for modules to work. Let's see. Question from Arcanist Zed. Have you scoped the world updating epic? Not yet. Question from It's Just Me 1330. It's Just Me Leet. Could we get an option to show the token art as a preview in the actor sidebar instead of the token portrait? That is an option, unless you're asking about something else. So in the sidebar, if you right-click on an actor, you can either view character artwork or you can view token artwork. So you can choose either variety of artwork. You can view it. Maybe
Perhaps
I misunderstand.
The actual, the icon that you see in the sidebar there, next to its name.
Oh, for the thumbnail of the actor.
Thumbnail.
Interesting. Yeah, so this is something that a module could now easily do because we factored out the thumbnail as a getter on the actor document just now in V9P2. So if you had a module, you could replace that getter with your own getter that would instead use the token artwork instead of the portrait artwork. So that would actually become very easy to do with a module now. Yeah.
Okay. We can't have a built-in option to tie token images to states, things like shapeshift. So currently that's been handled. That's handled at the system level. Because the data that you need for those actors is so system specific. I don't know if there's a lot of value. I don't know if there's much that you could move out that's common among systems to be useful in core.
All right. Well, let's take a couple more questions, and then I think it's a good time to wind down for today. Question from Muddles. Any chance for a partner app for Foundry to show just character sheets? Love to have two types of logins, one for lightweight mobile devices, one for more full. Yeah, I can't comment on it in the context of a plan because it's not something that we've scoped for doing yet, but it is something that's very much in my mind that in the longer term, I would love to have a lightweight version that works well for mobile, for tablet, for small devices, that could be sort of more of a companion app. I would love to have that eventually. I think that's more of sort of a long-term thing, though, that will take some time, I think, before we get a chance to do it.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts with that.
Yeah.
Definitely. There was one from Lalkin about key bindings, which, quick one to answer. Cody is that's his pet.
Mm-hmm. We like that issue too. It's not just Cody.
Yes. Cody's been championing it a bit, I suppose, but it's getting some love, and we're doing our best to squeeze it into this release. It might slip, but not this release. Sorry, this version. It might slip, but it's there.
Yeah, we'll try and address it later in V9. We'll see. I'm hopeful that we will. Mushy asked a question about, are there plans to add player-dependent vision of hidden creatures, things like that? Again, it's hard to talk about this as a plan, but I commented briefly earlier on the vision modes and the sort of expanded vision configuration that we want to do. I'd originally hoped to do that in V9. It's going to slip a little bit to V10, I think. But as part of that, hopefully we will have support for different vision rules that a token can have, and part of that vision rule would have to do with visibility of other tokens within the polygon of their field of view. So I think that's something looking forward towards the future, that having something like a true sight might be possible. But before we even go there, I mean, we're much more concerned with some of the basics of, like, a low light vision or a dark vision type vision rule that can be mechanically applied and customized by the game system. For Reals says some issue about this particular channel crashing on the Xbox Twitch app. It's probably because of my 21:9 resolution somehow, that I suspect is probably the root cause of the issue. I'm sorry about that.
There's what do you think is the single most coolest thing in Foundry? Which might be a difficult question to answer.
Ooh. This is the single coolest thing in Foundry? I mean, I think it's unfair to choose just one, but I think if I would probably choose either the API because of what it allows to have created.
The entire API.
Well, okay, yeah, that's a cop out. I'll go with Doors then, because I think if there's one feature that was originally and has continued to be like a differentiator and quality of life improver for Foundry, I think Doors, for being a relatively small feature, it, like, the amount of mileage and quality and enjoyment that I get out of opening and closing doors is high. It's just a small thing, but I don't know. I guess if I have to choose.
It is cool. Very cool.
All right, maybe last question or two. Kim, you wanna choose a final?
Oh, okay. Are you going to delay the PT release to fix that vision rotation bug? No, I think so.
Probably not. It's pretty edge case, and it's just the prototype, so I think we'll just let that roll out.
Yep. It takes a while to read these, sorry. What are the dimensions of your monitor in pixels?
It's 3440 by 1440, which is a pretty standard 21 by 9 pixel ratio.
Okay, I did get to the end. Okay. Do your families understand what it is you, I assume, do for a job? Yes, my families do fairly well. They're reasonably tech savvy, and they understand. I think they do. Some better than others.
Yeah, for me, it's probably some part yes, part no. I have mixed success with my family in them understanding what I do, but yeah. All right, I think we've reached about the end. I'll choose one or two final ones.
Yeah, if you've got something you really want to answer.
Ooh, I can't resist. That's a hard question. Pickers 101 asks if you can hire a free specialist developer, what specialization would you acquire? Are they a good developer? Are they? I mean, do we assume that they're really good at what they do? Let's assume.
They're a specialist.
Well, I mean, you can be specialized and be crap.
You can. It's true.
Let's assume that they're really good. If it's really good, and I can get a free developer. Oh, that is a really hard question. That's a really hard question. If they're really good at what they do, I would probably choose like a UI UX front end person. If they're truly good, but I think that's a hard specialization to hire for, because there's a lot of people who view themselves as a front end dev, but it's really hard to find someone who's truly exceptional when it comes to UI UX. I mean, I'm not. We do okay, but there would be a lot of opportunity to improve there. I'd also be sorely tempted at someone who's just absolutely class at, sort of cloud infrastructure development deployment, because I think there's probably some optimizations we could do there in the longer term. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, because you can. There's theory. There's a lot that goes into UI and UX that don't necessarily get from just picking it up as you go along. You can study that and actually be good at it in a much more objective way.
Yeah.
Than you might just get from just general suggestions for UI and UX improvements.
All right, last question. Major victory. Yeah, these what if questions, I can't resist them. If you had unlimited time and resources, what feature would you bring to the status of perfect? I mean, I think for me, I don't know if this is one feature or two and I'm cheating, but like the lighting and vision system, I think is just so important to the way that I like to play games and to the way that I want Foundry to be, at the forefront of what at least like the 2D VTT can do for you. And I think that our lighting and vision system is really, really good. And it just pisses me off when there's like some aspect of it that doesn't work well. So like some edge case where the vision computation is wrong, some situation in which the lighting performance is not as good as it could be or should be, some situation in which, you need maybe more powerful of a computer to run a certain type of map than I think you should. If I could optimize that to infinity, I think I would, above probably other features.
Yeah, like the Doom code.
Yeah.
if you could. It's just so hard to. It's like, you know, those diagrams where you have three things and you can only pick two, right? It's like accuracy, performance,
Yeah.
and you can't often have everything.
All right, well, I think let's wrap up there for today. Thank you all very much for sticking with us, for asking interesting questions. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you are excited about what you're seeing with V9. I'm really excited to showcase it all to you, and can't wait to hear some testing feedback from those of you who are brave enough to venture into the here be dragons territory of V9. All right, thank you all very much. Cheers, and we will see you next time. Until then, farewell.
Take care all.